Welcome to Broken Kayfabe, the unofficial after show of Breaking Kayfabe with Baldred and Barry. And Ariel, we are joined today by my beautiful wife, who's going to tell you what a knucklehead that I am. And then we're going to talk your Bay Area brother, Matt Crowder.
Sounds good.
All right. So I don't know if you know this, but every time I'm with Frankie, it's an adventure. Like every time. So yesterday, we went out for breakfast and we went to this local diner. And so we sit down in a booth. And beside us, there's a table full of women celebrating somebody's birthday. So I think it was their 70th, maybe. And there's 6 or 8 women, and they are very loud. So the waitress comes over to us, and she brings our drinks and asks what we want to order. So I go ahead and order. And then Frankie orders. And you have to picture my mouth when I'm saying this. So he says to her, "How much is a side of gravy?"
Okay.
So she says $2, and he looks at me and he goes, "What'd she say?" So at this point, I didn't know if he thought she was deaf or if he was deaf.
Oh, wow.
Well, so I was really thrown off by this group of 6 or 8 ladies drinking mimosas at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they were just super, super loud. I mean, unbelievably loud. I mean,
they
were yelling. And so at one point, I don't know whether it was before or after. I think it was before. I go, I think I'll just yell too. So I was thrown off. But the thing was, here's the thing. We're very frugal, and the breakfast that I wanted was $7.69. However, just a biscuit and gravy was $5.69. Well, the meal that was $7.69 came with a biscuit, so I just needed a side of gravy and wanted to make sure they weren't going to charge me like $4 for the gravy. That's,
for the record, $4 would have been fine to avoid that whole situation.
So I don't know why I was speaking like that. The lady, I mean, it sounds as if the lady didn't speak English or I thought she was deaf. That was not the case. It was, I think, more of me making sure she understood what I was asking. Why I put it so slow and dramatic, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's. The
waitress, I forgot to tell you, she was probably in her 60s too. So that was a little more embarrassing because he could have been acting like she was deaf.
Right. Come on, Frankie.
I think it was the sound. I don't like really loud places, where you have to compete with another table to have a conversation with the person that you're with. It drives me crazy, and I have a hard time communicating when I'm just overcome by all these sounds. So I think that was part of it, but also I was concerned that I was going to be overcharged for my gravy, which I didn't want.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's understandable. Yeah.
Not a concern.
Well, okay, of course. But still, $4 for gravy is pretty expensive. I'm frugal too.
So we were both fine with it.
Yes. So then the story continues, of course, right? It's not just one and done on this day yesterday. We leave breakfast and we go do some errands and we're coming home. And to get back to our house, we have to cross over a drawbridge that opens every 20 minutes. I can't tell these stories without laughing. Okay, so the bridge is up and we're sitting there waiting, and the bridge goes down. And so, as you can imagine, there's a line of cars waiting to go over. We get to the top of the bridge, and there's a man on a bicycle coming over, on the pedestrian walkway side. And Frankie, just as cheerful as can be, waves to the guy like he's his long-lost best friend.
Oh, my goodness.
Then he looks at me and goes, "Why did I do that?" I'm like, I have no idea.
Oh, my goodness, Frankie.
Yeah, I had no. Well, it's like when you pass by someone, you always go, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, how you doing?" Right?
Yeah.
And like we're on the side of the road, on our side, and then he's like passing like closer than a sidewalk would be, right? Mm-hmm. He is like right next to our car with just this little small barrier passing us because it's a drawbridge. There's not a lot of room. And so it was just, he was so close. He was like in my space that I felt like I had to wave.
However, he did select this one man out of about 7 or 8 people that had also just passed.
Oh, really? There were more people?
Oh, yeah, but he only waved to the one guy. Everybody else he let go, and then he waved to this one guy like he was his buddy.
Wow.
Well, this guy kind of made eye contact. I think that's what it was. I don't know. I can explain like why I'm weird and how I'm weird and my weirdness, but that's probably what I don't know. I don't know what it was. I've done that before though.
Really?
Like I just wave at someone. I'm like, why did I just wave at that person?
Oh, well, I mean, I you know what? I've done that a lot when I was in North Carolina, and people wave back. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, because you don't get that here in California. You don't get that here in California too much.
Yeah, they wave at you with one finger in California.
Exactly, or with a firearm in their hand. So no, but yeah, it's other places are more, friendlier and stuff. So it's pretty cool, when they wave back and acknowledge you. I like that. I mean, I get a kick out of that. So I don't know. That's just me.
Well, cool. So you just heard, you and the brothership will hear 2 stories of just me being weird, and you got to meet my wife, Jana.
Mm-hmm. Nice to meet you. Nice to hear from you.
You too. I'm sure I'll have more of these stories in the very near future.
Cool, because we're running out of content. So.
Oh, just call me anytime.
Awesome.
All right, so that's how we started off here on Broken Kayfabe. And I am trying out a new mic. I hope that it works. I hope that I don't sound like I'm far from it. If I do, just let me know, because I am kind of far from it.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm like a good 8 inches.
Wow. It sounds pretty good. I mean, you don't sound too far away, but you don't sound like you're hella up close either. But okay. There's some like I guess like stuffiness, or I don't know how to describe it. It's not really it's clear, but it's there's like a slight congestion to it. If I don't know how to really word it. It sounds a little
how about now?
Okay, well, there you go. Are you closer to the mic?
Yes.
Okay, that helps out actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had it farther away because we were sharing, but now that
she actually sounded closer. She sounded a lot clearer.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a little close. Well, so when we did a couple test calls, and I always sounded way too loud on the test calls, and she sounded normal. So I sound like I was right up on it. And so now I've got about a hand's width.
Okay. Yeah,
away
that
from
works.
So if I sound good, then we'll keep rolling.
Yeah, that works.
So Ariel, I wanted to thank Jeff and Barry for allowing us to do this podcast for the Brothership. Matt is actually the last person that's in the Brothership that have recorded. Next week, we'll have an interview with a friend of mine, Jeff the Scientist. That's coming up next week. This week, we have Matt Crowder, your Bay Area brother. And I hope you guys are able to get together and go out to eat, because that'll be so cool.
Yeah, hopefully, when I find time with my busy schedule nowadays,
Yeah. When I was in the restaurant and bar business, it was tough to make plans with normal people because of the schedule that I had to have. And it sounds like you're kind of going through the same thing, being that you work nights and you work the weekends and you're working all these extra hours.
Yeah, it takes a toll on the social life. I haven't seen some friends for several months already, but yeah, that's how it is sometimes,
Yeah, it's a sacrifice.
Yeah. I mean, the bills don't pay themselves. Houses here is expensive. Everything's expensive, but yeah, oh my gosh, California. Get your
that's one of the lessons that I learned after I got into real estate. and just as getting older in life, was that nothing is free. Everything that you get comes with a sacrifice, and even down to your money that you make, right? It's like, hey, if you want a new car, then how do you get the new car? You sacrifice money. How do you get the money? You sacrifice time to work
Absolutely.
for it, right?
Exactly.
You give these things. And so you give up your time with your family, you give up time of doing what Ariel wants to do, and you sacrifice your time to work for someone, and then they pay you the money. Then you use that money that you get and you sacrifice that money for your car. And that's what I tell my kids. It's the same thing, right? As, hey, you have to be willing to put the work into it. But it's that, nothing is free. Somebody has to sacrifice something for it. So, and I hope this doesn't come off as a brag or a humble brag, but we donate a ton of stuff to the homeless shelters and things around here, the food pantries, to try and help people out. But even those things that we give to those people, they aren't free, because we sacrificed money, our time, whatever, right, to get that money. So, even if you're on disability, you sacrificed your health to get that disability, to get that money, to be able to buy these things for those people.
Yeah.
And so that's, and my kids, I want them to understand that, like, that work is something that you are going to have to do, but you're doing it so that you can have other things. It's quid pro quo, tit for tat, however it is that you want to say it. It's you have to give up something in order to get it. I don't know, I'm long-winded here, so I'll make this next point. When I moved here, my kids were 10 and 12, and they're from my wife's previous marriage. And the kids did not understand where the money comes from. They didn't get that. They didn't appreciate how hard Jana works, or they didn't appreciate that she worked. And I don't think that they should be like, oh wow, mom's the breadwinner, mom's superwoman. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but they just did not have a grasp of everything that comes through this house is because of, number one, my wife's hard work, my wife's education, that she's worked, the past, however many years. She's 41. So, 25 years that she's been working. It's all, a culmination of those things and her experience that we're able to have those things. And so I saw that right from the get-go, that they didn't appreciate what they have, because they just think it magically appears out of air, right?
Right.
And out of the COVID, they were actually able to see, how hard she works, because that hit, and then all of a sudden they are having school here at home. I'm teaching 2 kids, and she's working in what we call the basement, which is really just a part of the house that used to be a garage that was converted to another room. So we're all working in the same house, and they're able to see how hard she works, so how hard she sacrifices her time to get these things done. And it's, they would see she doesn't have time to go to the bathroom. She might be running to the bathroom because, she's going from one meeting to the next meeting all day long, and they see her running, right? That time that you sacrifice for work is important, but it's also important that you get that time back, because you can't just keep giving and giving and giving and giving. You got to rest and recharge. I think that's where I was going.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you rest, recharge, but like you said, making sacrifices, very important in life. A lot of people don't realize that, or like you said, are ungrateful, or they just don't realize. That whole entitlement thing with some of the younger people nowadays is kind of pisses me off, but whatever. That's a story for another day.
Well, actually, that's sort of like one of my fears for my kids is that they'll think they don't have to work hard to get what they are going to get. And the reality is, with the prices that housing is, they're going to have to work harder.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm not patting myself on the back. But I want to say I probably care too much about the kids and their futures, because I am just a step parent. So, but I really am invested in, and have this worry for them and the future and what their future will look like, based upon housing trends and the way that we've been going for the last we could say the last 8 years. After 2008, 2009. So how many years is that? That's 12 years, 13 years. We've been on the incline as far as how housing prices go, but really it goes back 50 years to the 50s, of where housing was so much more affordable.
Right.
But anyway, I'm not gonna get on that soapbox.
I don't know. Story for another time, I guess. I would actually like to know more about housing. But yeah.
Well, one day I thought about this too. I'll have to tell my story about getting into real estate, because probably not now, because I already talked too much. And I always, when I go back and listen to our podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to edit this. I sound like a moron. And so I edit the heck out of me, so I don't sound as much like a moron. No. But sometime I'll tell you the story, just how it changed my life and changed the way that I think, and it made me a different person than what I was before I got into it. Well, that's sort of true. It's sort of not true. Let me tell you this story. So this is a story that I when I used to work with Jana. So the company that she was one of the owners of got sold to this other company, bigger company, that was not local to us. We lived in Wilmington. This company lived in Charlotte. And once they took over, this company did not care about people whatsoever. You could say, I'm sorry, I can't come in today. My parents died in a horrible accident. And they would say, okay, we're sorry to hear that, but we're going to have to give you 2 points on your whatever, right? So you'd accumulate points. You get so many points, you get fired. Seriously, they were that bad. And so, and I didn't like them, but it was a job. And so I had planned my exit and said, I'm going to get into real estate, and made that a plan so that I would get out of it. Well, they came up with this thing, and they stopped doing charities. We used to do charities. So whatever, like if you wanted someone to sponsor your softball team, we would do it. It was like something like $300 or something. So, and the owner, who was a unique guy, he was kind of, he's kind of quirky, but he's really smart, made himself a lot of money, but he would donate 10% of his earnings to charity. And we always had something. Hey, this much charity that we're giving money to is whatever, Smile Train, or, it was digging wells in Africa one time. It was just all these different things that we were doing, Toys for Tots. We always did this. Well, when the new company came along, they just stopped it. There was none of that. They would not give money to help out with a volleyball team, nothing. No kids little league team, nothing. Zero, zilch. And so how they came in and were just like the typical corporation just kind of pissed me off. And so they did this thing where they said it was like someone who was up high in the company, let's say like a attorney level. Their son was in the Boy Scouts, and they were doing a book drive. And the books were going to go to, it was like a mother's and son's house somewhere in the Charlotte area. And then the company said, for every book donated, we will donate $3 to this charity. And I said, that is really crazy, right?
Yeah.
For every book donated, they'll donate $3. Well, I've always went to yard sales, flea markets, and whatever. I knew I could buy books for 10 cents. So I went nuts nuts, like crazy, like insane. Every book I could buy, I bought them. And I contacted businesses and says, hey, this is what I'm doing. Can you give me a deal? And I bought books from the Salvation Army by the box full. I mean, a ton of books.
Oh.
Crazy. So I had taken some of them and put them in a room there at work. But I had gotten a whole car full of these books. And then I had this medical emergency that put me in the hospital for 3 days. Well, I think on that Monday, they had to get out of my car and get to work, and I was in the hospital. So someone had to come to my car, get the books out, and take them to Jana, who took them to Charlotte. And she had a Ford Explorer at the time, and these boxes was like 8 or 9, picture 8 or 9 or 10 liquor bottle boxes full of books.
Wow.
So it's really, really, really heavy. Mm-hmm. So it turns out that we had over, let me see if I can get the math right. I want to say 900 books.
Wow.
And so that company ended up having to donate almost $10,000. They were completely shocked that came, and I didn't take the credit, but I will now. That was almost 100% me. Mm-hmm. And so the book, the books from ours. So we had 100 employees, 125. We got, and if I find the email, I'll pull it out. But because I have an email from us where we did it, and I still have this kid's picture. So they have a picture of this kid standing by all these books, just up. It's absolutely hilarious. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can just find it real quick. So I kept a copy of this email.
Okay. With
this kid on it, and it's a kid in a Boy Scout uniform. And he's standing in this sea of books, and it was from someone in our company who says, "Hey, this is what happened. This is the number of books that we got." Let me see if I can find that. I wasn't prepared to tell this story. It's kind of funny because I just saw it not that long ago. Oh, here we go. Got it. So this is actually the email that Jana sent me. All right, dear blank. The kid's name was Tyler. I really do appreciate all the books you have donated for the Mother and Children Housing Program. I know that the children, as well as the staff at the ministry, will be excited. Oh, here we go. My numbers were way off. To see the more than 3,000 books that have been collected.
Wow.
2,200 books came from our office, and 254 came from the other place. So we had 125 people, and we got 2,200 books. The other place had 1,500 people, and they only got 254.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so they were donating $3, whether they did or not. I don't know. And then there's the picture of the kid, which I'm going to save that, and I'll post this in this group. So it's hilarious. Mm-hmm. But they kind of, I told that story to just show you how crazy I am, and that I've always been, not always, but most of my life, the past 10 years, I've really been, crazy with giving. But the thing that you got to realize about giving is that sacrifice comes from somewhere, Right. And so if we can sacrifice, me, my family, my wife, my kids, a little bit to help other people out, then we're willing to do that. And that's just sort of the message that I give our kids, is that you have to sacrifice something to get what you want, but you also can sacrifice to help other people out.
Of course, definitely. I have a question though. Yep. Is that the company, the one that stopped, doing the donations and all that stuff, and that doesn't care for people? Are they by chance called Hilton?
Oh God! No.
Yeah, because that still fucking pisses me off.
Right?
Yeah. Like, oh.
yeah. That's no, it's not Hilton. They're a company. This company is a company that does marketing and sales. And so the original company that I was with, had gotten the Inc. 200 or 500 fastest growing companies, and they saw that and said, "Oh gosh, we want to buy them." So they ended up buying us or acquiring us, as they say.
I see.
Yeah.
And also another question: how many of those books were like erotic fiction or romance novels for the children? No, seriously, because that's a lot of books. And it was for like mothers and what was it? Mothers and children's.
Yeah, a mothers and children's like a homeless shelter.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I screened. Well, actually, that's a lie. I didn't screen all the books.
Of course not.
But I did buy a lot of those books through the Salvation Army. So I'm gonna hope that they vetted some of those.
Well, yeah, hope so too. But you know, sometimes a couple erotic fictions slip through or something.
but if not, you know, then at least they got the $3 for it, you know.
There you go. Supposedly, no, yeah. I hope they did. I hope they did.
Me too. For the longest time, I would go on that website and look to see a donation from that company because it would have been close to $10,000. And so, and then I realized, you know, hey, I can't, you know, hold it in my head to keep, you know, if it so through 3,000 books, $3 a piece, that's $9,000. So I realized I just couldn't keep that negative energy inside me of wanting to make sure these people did the right thing. And then, you know, they would have to. I mean, it was, well, so I realized when I got into real estate, I said to the real estate company, I said, look, I just came from this environment. I don't want to be in the same environment. And they said, oh, that's not the case at all. We'll help you out. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll whatever. And then I realized that the real estate company was very similar, right? That they didn't care about me as a person and me learning to be the best that I could be in my craft. They only cared about how many sales I could do.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So I realized that this real estate company had sold me on, hey, this is how great we are. This is all we'll do for you. But they sold me, you know, it's like, and they expected me to sell houses. They expect me to convince you that this was the perfect house for you. I'm sorry, that is not what I want to do. I do not want to tell you and convince you that this is the house for you. I need you to, when we close, to not say Frankie sold me on this house and this house is a piece of junk. I need the person that buys that house to go, oh, I'm glad I chose this house. You know, I want it to be their decision, and I'll help them make it. But I don't want it to be that I am selling someone something, because you got to buy a used car. You don't want the guy to come out and tell you and sell you on the car, right?
Right.
You want him to educate you on it, and then you make the decision.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the problem with salespeople, right? They only say the good, they never say the bad.
Right.
So I realized that this real estate company, you know, which is a franchise of a much larger company, that they just sold me, and that pissed me off. And then I'll tell that story a whole nother time.
And that's the podcast, folks. See you next month. We're going a little long here. I guess we're gonna talk about hometowns another time. But yeah.
Wow, I did just totally bulldog that whole thing, didn't I?
No, it's fine. I love it. I mean, you know, it's getting to know you a little bit more every week, you know, and your motivations for doing things. But yeah, we totally went off the
off the
rails with what we were supposed to talk about in the limited time we have. No, it's fine though. I love it. I wish we could do more of these longer conversations, but you know, I mean, you don't want to lose.
Some of us got to work.
Yeah, that's true, and we don't want to lose listeners either. They're like, "What the heck? Why are they talking about this stuff?" You know, books and houses.
and Frankie cutting promos.
No, it's fine. I love that.
Well, good.
So
we'll take a break from Frankie cutting promos on old companies that he used to work for in 2015, and now we'll go with a exclusive interview that I did with Matt Crowder late one night. And you know, he's a Bay Area guy, lives across. I saw you guys talking about some of the same places, and I think that is so freaking cool. So here we go with my conversation with Matt Crowder.
So I don't know the weather, but I thought the bay was cooler.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, it's like it can be kind of funky. I mean, this is technically our winter time, so you get rain for majority of, I'd say, like parts of November, like December, like Christmas time, you get rain. Like I can't remember a Christmas that I've spent out here that hasn't been rain, which is like the weirdest thing in the world, because it's like I grew up in Minnesota. I had snow. I associate snow and Santa Claus, not the white powder that you're probably used to down in the old Florida man, but if anything else. But
I'm sorry, where'd you say you grew up?
I grew up in Minnesota, so I grew up
Minnesota.
in a very small town. It's not as small anymore. It's a smaller burb now, Stillwater, Minnesota. It's on the border of Wisconsin and Minnesota. There's St. Croix River, which kind of cuts through. It's a nice little scenic place.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are still there. My brother lives just south of there. And, my other brother lives in the western suburbs of Minneapolis, and my sister lives in Minneapolis. So,
oh man, I bet that water is pretty. The river there.
Yeah, no, it's nice. You kind of in the summertime it's great. In the wintertime, it's just not the greatest place on earth because it does get bitterly cold up there, and the main street is pretty much lined with restaurants and antique shops. So if you like the antiques and you want to go down for a burger or malt, you could probably get that, pretty much within a couple blocks of each other down there. So I had a few bars too as well. So it's a cool place in the summertime, and you get kind of the scenic spots because you take a little hill down all the way down from probably, I'd say maybe a half a mile up, and then you come down and you get to see all the trees and you get to see the water, and it's really nice.
So does the St. Croix go into the Lake Superior, or?
No, it doesn't go that far. I'm trying to think exactly where it comes to, because it just goes a little bit north of Stillwater into like another little town.
It looks like near Gordon, Douglas County State Wildlife Area. Yeah. There's like a lake.
Yeah, no. When you're getting towards the Arrowhead, that's where like Superior is, like Duluth and all other stuff. Like if you Google an image like during the winter time where there's a bridge in Duluth that goes over Lake Superior, and it looks like just powdered donut clouds all the way through because the temperature drops so rapidly. So if you go below zero, you're talking, you just have these white puffy clouds from all the fog and stuff. I mean, it's not like out here where you have high level fog, and then, because I'm sure tomorrow we're going to have fog considering how warm it was, because it'll get down during the wintertime here probably in the upper 30s, sometimes the 40s, low 40s, and you'll get that. But most of the fog's up in San Francisco and off of the coast and stuff. If you're down in like Carmel, which is about an hour south, Santa Cruz, which is about another 30 minutes from me south, where you can kind of you'll get all that stuff. But yeah, the Bay Area is like a magical microclimate place. Like there's different weather all over the place. Like in the summertime, it's really cool in San Francisco, which is about an hour north of me. And then when you're in like Palo Alto, where I live, and Santa Clara, where I'm actually at right now, you're going to get probably temperatures like 10 to 15 degrees warmer. Like we got married in San Francisco the middle of June. It was 65 degrees, and our poor bridesmaids, had strapless gowns, and they're freezing to death because you get that little wet cold. It's different than like your probably dry cold, where we're in the middle of the country and other stuff like that, where it's really, you feel it when you live there, but when you have something new, it makes it a little bit different. But yeah.
And Santa Clara, not to be confused with Santa Carla from the Lost Boys movie.
Yeah, well, they filmed in Santa Cruz. That's
right.
where they filmed it. Yeah.
And I had read something where they wanted it to be an actual town, but something didn't work out, and so they took, instead of Santa Clara, they made it Santa Carla.
Yeah, no. Well, it's funny because the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, they have, where they take that big, big wide shot where they have
Yes.
vampires kind of going in. You see that Ferris wheel and stuff and the roller coaster. Yeah, it's the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk.
Santa Cruz. Let me see where that's at. So I see Daly City, San Francisco, south. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, south.
Oh yeah. I got it right here. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Ariel Agbalog is in San Jose.
Yeah, no. It's funny because when I saw him, like where he was, I think one time he posted, and I was like, "Damn, I got a Bay Area friend. I got a Bay Area brother shipper here." So I'm like, at some point, we'll have our paths will have to cross. But it's funny, the Bay Area is this gigantic place.
So how long would it take to go from Santa Cruz to San Francisco? Let's just say.
Without traffic, you're looking at, going north and like during the day, probably be, I would say, about an hour, maybe a little bit over an hour. If you're talking pre-pandemic traffic, like during the day, like probably rush hour, you're looking at like 2.5 hours. But
wow. Everybody's working from home. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You have $1 million homes here, and most people are either, the joke is, what do you do in the Bay Area? Oh, I work in tech. It's simple as that.
Yeah.
So, it's just like, oh yeah, I work in tech. I do this, I do that. No, I'm a house cleaner. No, you work in tech. Stuff like that.
Yeah, so back in the day when I used to work for my wife, you may have heard me talk about it on the 605 or on our podcast. I mean, on 605, the Breaking Kayfabe, or on our podcast, Broken Kayfabe. We sold insurance, and so California was always really interesting to me. And like, I'm looking at the map right now, and so you go like right outside of San Jose or Palo Alto or Fremont, and then all of a sudden you got all this green space. And us over on the East Coast, we don't think of California that way. We think of California as LA, but we, over there, when we would write the insurance, we'd have to see if it was in like a, I can't remember what we called it, fire hazard area.
Oh yeah, no. That's usually up in the hills. Like now it's really bad because, we had a very wet December, like probably the wettest December we've had in at least 4 or 5 years. And now we're probably going to have another bad fire season considering it's been so dry.
Well, and then you guys also have mudslides.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, you can't have like a typhoon monsoon type of deal where it's just like, oh yeah, we're just going to saturate the hell out of the, ground, where it's like, no, it just needs to be gradual. But, at some point, I've been here for 10 years. Like the first 2 winters were normal. After like 2014, it's been bone dry. If you see some of the reservoirs, like if you go down like I-5, like San Luis Obispo and a few other places, you can see the watermarks really easily.
Well, so if you look in my area, you'll see a ton less green in Florida. But, if you get out of, the 3 or 4 counties that are right here, then you see a lot more green with, the Everglades and all the other rural areas. But in our county, so, our county is basically St. Pete up to Clearwater. No, I'm sorry. Higher than that, like Palm Harbor. And that's all brown on the map. But there's a little greens in there, like, because it's wetlands, you can't develop on it, right?
Right.
But then once you get up a little higher, then it's all green. But like then you go over east and then to Tampa, and that's all brown. It's already developed. But then just outside that, then you run into like a little green. But California, like you guys, it is. You guys have got a lot of green space still out there.
Yeah, well, it's like the West in general. Like everything, there's like compact spaces, and then there's just open spaces. Like if you think about it, you go a little bit north of San Francisco, probably like past Marin and stuff like that, where it's like there's a lot of green up there, and that's closest, the Golden Gate Bridge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or it's just like you can go kind of higher up, and then if you go even farther, like up to Mendocino, which is like gorgeous. Like my cousin-in-law got married up there probably, it's almost 2 years ago at this point. It's probably longer than that. And just the nice windy road. It's like, and you go through the redwoods and you think like you're going through Endor, like in Return of the Jedi, where it's just like you see these big tall trees, you see the sun come through, and you would think, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the forest of Endor. What's going on here? And stuff like that, where it's just like it's cool stuff like that. And there's so much. The only thing I need to do before like erosion kicks in is road trip down Highway 1, because now they're starting to get mudslides and fires down by Big Sur, which is just south of Carmel. So Clint Eastwood was the mayor of Carmel for the longest time, and I think he still lives down there. And my in-laws have a place down there about 2 blocks from the beach. It's this kind of sleepy beach town with, some beach folks, and then, people are surfing every day and just retirees that, I'm done with the Bay Area, so I'm just going to come down and do that. And it's the same thing with LA, and they go out to Palm Springs or Palm Desert, and they just go out in the desert, and they either have breathing problems or they're like, I'm tired of LA, get me the hell out of here. And, I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere.
Well, it's crazy to me that like we have all this green space, but we still build right on top of each other, right? But now that people are able to work from home, so my wife just got a promotion a month or so ago. She could not have gotten this promotion in the past had she not decided to move to Cleveland, and we would never move to Cleveland. That's just where her company's headquartered, right? So,
man, that's where I met my wife.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, we met at a Bruce Springsteen concert in Cleveland, Ohio, and
so you weren't living there?
No. Well, so I can go into another story. I will try not to go down the Bruce path. I know Chris Spiker and probably Max Spiker are like, talk more, damn it. We want to hear this. And it was during, I'd say like late 20s. I was road tripping everywhere to see Bruce Springsteen. And I just happened to come back from New York City to visiting a high school friend of mine who was an investment banker on Wall Street. And I just happened to be going up that way, and I was going to see 2 Bruce Springsteen shows at Madison Square Garden. And I just love Madison Square Garden. If you've never been to the Garden at any point, it's so great. I
was there for SummerSlam '98.
Oh yeah, nice. That's the only thing I haven't done. I haven't done wrestling at the Garden, but I've done concerts at the Garden. I did Pete Seeger's 90th birthday. I think it was early May of 2009, and that was cool. That was like, think of all the 60s musicians and then some kind of new folk musicians, all in like a 4.5 hour show. So I stay in the city, and it's really good time.
Let me interrupt you for a second. Yeah. There was a Pete Seeger song that Bruce Springsteen done.
Yeah, there's a few. There's
something Jode Thomas.
Tom Joad's more of takes it from the Steinbeck novel, and it could tie back to California, where you go down to Monterey, which is just north of Carmel, where they have Cannery Row, where Steinbeck actually wrote a lot of his works, like The Grapes of Wrath and stuff like that. But Tom Joad's a good one. That's mostly his acoustic stuff, which is good. I mean, to me, it's like you have 2 types of Bruce fans. You have Everyone Who Will Live and Die by the E Street Band and him, which is, a 2.5, 3.5 hour show, depending on when you catch him on tour, at least now. And then an acoustic show is more subdued, very intimate. and it's a lot of fun. And I mean, to me, it's just like I happened to fall in love with it and do all that, but it brought me to my wife. And I just coming back from New York City, and funny, being a kid from a small town and seeing all these celebrities at Madison Square Garden and all the history that's there, like taking the $10 tour and looking at all the boxing memorabilia and the locker rooms for all the sports teams like the Rangers, the Knicks, the Liberty, all the other stuff. That was so cool. It was the best $10 I ever spent. It was so great.
You have got to. So how much do you listen to podcasts?
Mostly I have yours now because it's brilliant. A cheap plug there.
Thank you.
Yeah, mostly Arcadian Vanguard stuff.
Listen, man, you've got to listen to Kerry Silkin's podcast.
Okay.
Because he talks a shit ton of New York, Madison Square Garden stuff. And it's tremendous. I mean, I tell you, I will put up there with Breaking Kayfabe as like being the top wrestling related podcast, and he doesn't talk a whole lot of wrestling. He talks a little bit. It's him and Ian Riccaboni, and they are such nice people that it makes it even better. But he talks about scalping outside of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I know.
He introduces these characters that he loves, right? But for me, it's so much more because when you hear him, like you talk about the concerts you went to, that's history, right? One day there will not be a Bruce Springsteen or a Pete Seeger and these shows. Hold on one second. But he talks about all these people that he meets, but then he talks about these shows, and his memory is so much better than mine. And then he talks about not just Madison Square Garden, but the other shows, and talks about these New York places. It is so cool. And if you've liked Madison Square Garden and you love that place, you'll love his stories. And then plus he's just a really, really nice guy.
Yeah, no. I mean, to me, it's like me being not as old as probably most of the other guys that, have a podcast, like guys that got to go to the Spectrum, probably like Jamie Ward, who got to do all that stuff, which is so cool.
In 2 weeks, I have a conversation I had with Jamie Ward coming up. I don't like to call it an interview because I'm not an interviewer. I'm just the guy who thinks that the brothership is really freaking cool and that there's a lot of interesting people that are in the brothership. But I met Jamie Ward at the last CWF Legends Fan Fest, and I said, man, where's he been my whole life? Because he's a cool guy, and he's got all these stories. And we just talked for, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. And so that's coming up in 2 weeks. But yeah, you're absolutely right. But I know that you've got a ton of stories too. You just talked about, I was in Minnesota, and then here I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen. Well, I met my wife at a Bruce Springsteen concert. Now you're living over in California, and you talked about your daughter being born. The fourth try there, and she's an expensive kid. I mean, come on, that's a lot in and itself.
No. It's funny because it's like it all kind of came together, and it's just like from one spot to the other, and it's like it didn't all go in a straight line. You'd like to think that, but
hey, you know what? No one's life does. So here's something that's funny. So my kid is 15. My oldest son, he's 15, and my daughter's 13. And so I was talking to my kid, and it's really awkward for me because I've only had kids 3 years, right? And so, so they have another dad who's alive, and he's in their life, and he gets them every other week. And so tomorrow they go to his house. And so we were talking about, I was trying to tell him that these are the best years of his life. High school, college, best years of your life. And he's wanting to play sports, but he's debating on whether he wants to play this club sport, which is super competitive soccer, where that's really all you have time for. And I'm saying, do you want to spend your time and give all your attention to club soccer? Because, he's been talking to girls, and so it's like, look, you can't be distracted with the girls if you're going to play this club soccer. You have to, that has to be your number one focus. So I'm saying to him, look, this is the best years of your life, and you can, after you get done with this high school, you go to college, and then you get a job. So I pulled out a picture of a guy that was my roommate in college, one of my roommates in college, and I just on a whim last week said, let me see if I can find this guy. I tried to find him a couple years ago. I could not find him at all. So I found him, found a picture of him, his work picture, and I said, you see this guy? How old do you think he is? And he says, probably. And I said, bear in mind, I'm 48. He said, he's got to be 54, 55. And I said, okay, he's 5 years younger than me. So he's 43 years old. I said, you know why he looks that old? And he says, no. I said, because he worked his ass off in high school, worked his ass off in college. Then he got married. Then he had kids. And now he's got this job that he probably doesn't love, and he probably still works his ass off. I said, so enjoy high school, enjoy college, get good grades. As long as you get good grades, you can do whatever the hell you want. But just know, once that's over with, you got to start working, and it's game over. It's not, hey, I can go take every weekend and spend all weekend playing soccer. No, you know what? You're going to have the kid. You're going to have the wife. You're going to have things you got to take care of. You got to mow the lawn. You got to trim the trees, right? So, it was that lesson that I gave him that I hope that he got, and I think that he did, right? Because that's the truth, right? It's like at some point you got to buckle down, and until you get the wife, until you get the kids. So before I had my wife, it was just me and the dog. So as long as me and the dog had enough to eat and a roof over our head, I really didn't give a crap.
Yeah.
But now game has changed, right? And I'm thankful that my wife is the breadwinner, and I love her for that. Amongst many things, but there comes a time where, hey, high school, you can go do what you want, right? You can go and goof off as long as you get good grades. College, the same way. College gets a little harder, but then after college, it's game on.
Yeah, definitely. To me, it was like I was the class clown in high school, and then I did junior college for about 2 years. I was paying my own way. I was still living with my folks.
In Minnesota, still?
Yeah, no, it's there's a community college probably about 2 towns over. We called it we called it Harvard on a Hill, or the 13th grade, just to joke with ourselves.
Yeah.
And it was because I knew at that point I was like, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then you're trying to figure it out, and it's always hard. Everyone's different. And then you kind of make your way through that. And then after a while, I just got so tired. I got tired of school. I went to working. I did direct sales. I did retail, all the other stuff. And, it paved my way to do a lot of stuff. Then when I reached my mid-20s, then I started like, I need to see kind of beyond my backyard. I want to see what the world is like. So, to pull back to Bruce Springsteen, from about 2007 to about 2009, I probably went to, I think, close to 30 Bruce Springsteen shows.
Wow.
In that, and I did it all in my car. So I didn't fly. I flew to probably 3 shows, but I drove probably most of I-80, at least eastward. Went through all those places, which I still have the best memories of. I know Barry talked about it on Breaking Kayfabe, where he would be like, I love road tripping. I'll drive down from, his place in Pennsylvania down to Florida. where he'll spend time, and I totally love that, because it's freeing. You're just responsible for getting place to place. I would go from my house just in northwest of Minneapolis to Cleveland. That'd be like a 14-hour drive. I'd make that if I was going to like New York, or I was going to somewhere else. And it was cool. My sleep schedule at the time was so messed up. I was working third shift, I'd work second shift, and it's like where you didn't care. Like, you were just like, I'm up. If I have to take a nap, I'll just nap in the car at a rest stop, and then do what I gotta do and get to the next point where I needed to go.
That's true. But what year did you start liking Bruce Springsteen?
Well, I got into Bruce like just after high school, so it was probably around 2001. So when I was working at the good old Bullseye Target, and a friend of mine and a coworker, and I've lost touch with him, and I feel bad about that. For the longest time, when my life started to change, and I wanted to do other things, make more money, and we lost touch. But he gave me the greatest gift. That was Bruce. So this was just probably before 9/11. I just graduated high school.
Wow.
He had burned me every single album. He had and burned me his 4-disc track set, which is all his, like, I wouldn't call them B-sides, but all like studio outtakes. So, I mean, if you're a Bruce Springsteen fan and you've heard the albums and stuff and you haven't heard tracks, I highly recommend you. I'm pretty sure on iTunes they have it, or Amazon Music, and just download like at least 1 or 2 of the discs. And some of the songs are really great. Like on Facebook just a couple days ago, I posted that, and I wanted to get the brothership's opinion on, what their favorite band or artist, like their studio outtake that really, it may have been an obscure B-side, but you're like, how was this not a hit? How was this not on an album? How the hell did this not make an album? It made like the table scraps later on, which isn't a bad thing. But I obsessively listened to him from probably at least a good 2 years. And then I kind of took a little bit of a break, and then the bug came back probably, let's see, 2007 was really big, because I'm like, okay, I've seen him in my home state. I'm like, well, let's see where else we can go. So I plot this out, and this is just me just going out and seeing. That was my way of seeing the world. And, going from show to show was great. The first excursion was my first time I went to New York. So I drove from Minneapolis to Cleveland, spent the night in the lovely downtown Cleveland area. And then the next spot was pretty much, I stayed in Jersey that time, because everyone was always telling me, like, don't stay in New York. It's expensive. Like, you can stay in East Ruth, you can stay in the Meadowlands, or, you could stay in Secaucus, which, you just take the bus up to the Port Authority, which was actually really convenient. You could buy tickets at the hotel right by the front desk. So it made life easy. So I got tickets, and just went on a whim. And for most part, I mean, the first show was magical. It was great, but I built myself up to it. But seeing him out in his element, like in the New Jersey, New York area, where he's, obviously from New Jersey, but it's Madison Square Garden, I'd say, for any artist, is like their biggest, like, you've made it thing. And I think that would be for a lot of other artists, even if they're not from there. It's New York. It's kind of the biggest thing for them. And, I was on the floor the first night, and then I ended up getting ripped off, being my very Midwestern, very too trusting, got ripped off on scalping tickets. But then the guy I ended up working with.
Tell us how that happened.
Okay. So there's 2 nights.
Let me say this before we say that. So I'd heard of scalping tickets before, but I never understood how it worked, right? So listen to Carrie Silkin's podcast. I finally understood it. So at the age of 48, I understood how scalping tickets works. So, and I'll just explain to you how Carrie illustrated it. So you go there with $100 in your pocket, and you listen to people saying, "Hey, who wants tickets?" And then you go to that person and you try and buy them as cheap as possible, And so the face value is 20. You try and get 2 for 20. Now you've got $20 of these tickets, and then you try and sell them for $30 a piece and make that extra money. I had no idea. Look, I'm from the country in North Carolina. No idea about scalping tickets or scalp tickets. So go ahead with your story, please.
Yeah. So I had gotten night one show tickets on the floor, and it was really great. And I'm like, I want to go to night 2, but I couldn't find a ticket that I really, really wanted. And I probably could have gotten a nosebleed. But so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, I could either do the ticket drop, which is like waiting all day in a line, which I'm like, maybe, which, people have done. And they would tell me like, hey, I'd make out pretty good. You just have to get there early. And it's like, you're wasting your day for the most part. But if you're going to go full on and do it. So I run into the guy, like I'm running, I think it was just by one of the subway stops. And this guy, and the tickets look legit. And he's like $80. And I'm like, great damn deal. I'm like, oh, I got it. And then for the most part, and I won't go too in depth, but it just went to where if I'd have rubbed the ticket, I would have known it was just BS. So it was very close to like what someone would get for like so say you're like a season ticket holder, you go to a lot of shows, like the outside of the ticket looks very, very similar, but not like your typical Ticketmaster ticket where it's just like it gives, your block lettering and then probably like an orange and yellow like backing and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh yeah. So then I got the tickets. I take it to the front, and it was a floor ticket too. And they're like, oh, this is a fake ticket. And I'm like, what? It's like, oh yeah, go run down to the cop and tell him you got a fake ticket, blah, blah, blah. And the guy was gone by then. And I'm like, well, shit. So I'm out $80. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I'm like, I'll go on StubHub and I'll figure this out. So I had worked with this one guy, I think previously on another show, or at least I was thinking about it. And then the funny thing was the first set of tickets I got from him. So I finally get tickets. I think I'd probably paid maybe a little over $100. I'm like, okay, that's not a big deal. Because I knew what I was committed at this point. I'm doing this damn thing. So I get the paper ticket and they scan it, because the funny thing is the scalpers, because they have all the cops around the garden. So you have to do it probably like a block away. So they ain't seeing it because they're all the flatfoots are going around. Mm-hmm. And so I get the paper ticket and they scan it like, oh yeah, someone's already scanned this. And I'm like, oh my God, really? So I text the guy, and I'm on my old like Nextel flip phone with, the push to talk walkie-talkie, like way back in the 2000s, like probably the greatest phone before a smartphone, in my opinion, because to me, I'd mess with my boss. He'd be in a meeting. I'd go, hey, and he'd be in a meeting. He's like, dude, you can't do that. We're talking about stuff in here. Yeah. And I was like, all right. But then he's like, all right, you've already sunk in this much money. I'll get you a ticket on the house. So it happened to be, and I actually sat next to the guy at the show. It was this guy from Sweden. I think one of his party couldn't make it. And the guy who was selling the tickets, paid for the ticket. I got in, and my butt cheeks are clenching because I'm like, I've already, struck out twice. I'm like, is this going to be the third time? Is this like fate? So I get that, and then it scans through. I'm like, yes. So I sit down, and I talk to the guy from Sweden. He's just like, oh, I was wondering who got our ticket. And, we talk for maybe a little bit after that, but then we get into the show and stuff like that. And the funny thing is, the more shows you go to for Bruce, it's like more of it is, you have the atmosphere and the party atmosphere that he brings, and just the upliftment and joy that it brings. And then there's like the kind of left field songs that you wouldn't think you would hear, but you hear it in Madison Square Garden, which like really sticks with me. And that was so fun. And then after that, left the city. Then I stopped back in Cleveland, and then I think I had a day where I did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and which was really cool. And then I ended up doing 2 shows in Chicago, getting a nasty cold, coming home. And I'm like, you know what? That was really fun. So now next month I'm going to go to, quote unquote, the new Boston Garden. So I went just before Thanksgiving and flew out to Boston, did 2 shows in Boston, decided I'd be fancy and take a Lincoln Town car from the airport to my hotel. And the guy in the most thickest Boston accent's like, "You going to Devonshire?" And I probably butchered that, but it's just like, it was a really good guy. And then had a really early flight to come back just before Thanksgiving, and then took a little bit of a break. And then in 2008, he did a good chunk of the Midwest. And then one of the band members had passed away of skin cancer. So what happened is the 2 shows I saw in Boston, he was going to take a break because he had been really sick and had been kept quiet. So, the fans are talking in the line, where it's like, when you're into something, the hardcore fans, you're going to have a conversation with, even if you don't know them, you'll just pick up conversation. And they knew he was, sick, and he had just played a show in Indianapolis probably a month earlier. And it was towards the end of April, and the first show they were going to do was in Tampa, and it was ridiculously expensive. But I almost, threw caution to the wind. I'm like, be damned. I'm like, this is history. This is like, this is an emotional moment. I feel I need to be there. Well, I didn't go, which is fine. I ended up going to the Carolinas, and I went to the Carolinas for the first time, and flew down, and it was 30, I think it was probably 28 and snowing. One of my best friends who was staying up at my house at the time, and he drove me to the airport in the morning because he spent the night, and we're just nice slick and sleet snow and stuff like that, where it was just like, I'm kind of glad I'm going to the Carolinas, and it's going to be about 70, 75 and late April, and I'm going to have a good time. So I hit up. The first show was in Charlotte, and then I did the second show in Greensboro. And then that night in Charlotte, the first night, I met for the first time, a very attractive Australian woman who, I could go on for stories about that, where I met her in line, but the next night we really connected as friends, and we have a relationship to this day. I went to her wedding in Austin 2 years ago, and she emigrated from the Australia to the United States. Her and her husband live in Denver now. But
did she marry a Springsteen fan?
No, she that was funny, because it's like my wife and I, that was like our thing. But no, she married this lawyer from Texas. Nice guy, really good guy, but she was a free spirit. She went all over the place. I mean, to me, for all the stories I'll tell you guys, there are people that have dwarfed me on every level when it comes to this. And it's funny to kind of figure that out, because everyone's story is just like, because some of them are older, have the wherewithal to kind of, do that. But we really connected. And then I met Paul Molitor in the pit, on the floor both nights, and his wife, nice lady, but about the most clueless person you could have ever met. Because it's like, because Paul Molitor's from my home state. He's from St. Paul originally. Played for the Milwaukee Brewers. Was coached and was a part of the Twins organization. Played for the Toronto Blue Jays. All you Canadians out there, he won you a World Series twice, or at least helped. And he was a huge fan. We talked for a little bit, and I didn't want to bother him that much because it's like, when you have celebrities are always, a lot of it is you want to be so excited to meet somebody, and then it's either a big letdown or it's like, oh yeah, that guy's kind of cool. That there's no middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him, and we were talking to his wife, and I'm like, and the weather is always the icebreaker. I don't care who you are, if you're conversing with people, talking about the weather is an icebreaker, and it works. It's worked for me at least. And it's just like, I'm like, yeah, it's a heck of a lot better than 28 and snowing, huh? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, yeah, where are you from? I'm like, well, I'm from Coon Rapids. And his wife looks at me like I just did something that was so out there. It's like, you really are from Minnesota. I just looked at her. I'm like, yeah, I'm not BSing you. And it was just one of those things that it was cool. And then he absconded his way because he knows Bruce personally and, stuff like that, which was, he had been a fan since the early 80s. So he had been going to shows for years and years and years. And the next night was even cooler. We're in Greensboro. And, now as I got into more, because, as a wrestling fan, I was more of a WWF AWA fan. Not as big as Chris Zaha when it comes to AWA.
God, I was hoping when you said you were from Minnesota that you'd bring up the AWA and Chris Zaha. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Chris Zaha, to cut away from the Bruce stuff, bringing up Chris Zaha, cheap plug for Chris Zaha, but the most part, maybe the most infamous, famous person on social media there is, and I don't know if the thing of it is will he ever go away? The answer is no. And it's just, he is a treasure on so many levels, and it's just funny because when you get it, and he takes everything at stride, which is just absolutely brilliant. And it's just a lot of fun.
I'm going to tell you the truth. The truth is he is detrimental in my wife and I doing the sponsorship because he was the first person that we met and he made such an impact. He is a guy who does not hold back whatsoever. What you see is what you get. And he is the real deal. He is who he is. There is no, this is this persona for this person and this persona for the other. That is that guy. And I'm going to tell you, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, no, when I saw like the flat Zaha stuff, it popped me so much. And I'm just like, a lot of people in the brothership, just incessant ripping on the guy. It's like, it was funny this morning. It's just like when my daughter sometimes has sleepless nights, I will be on Facebook and I will be commenting on some sort of Chris Zaha post or giving him shit where it's just like, where, he has just been, out of Facebook jail. And I'm just like, I responded, breaking Facebook law. And, I get a couple from people. And then, and then I make the comment, I'm like, what, did you give Zook some tummy sticks in order for you to get out of jail early? And, something along those lines. It's this stupid little stuff. And the same with Rick Nathan. I love Rick, and I've never met Rick in person. And Rick is in LA, and it is, we have this kinship between our meme offs and just absolutely stupid, disgustingly stupid humor. It's just like the dumbest things you could probably figure out, and you just make each other laugh. And that to me is just so much fun.
Dude, and that is the beauty of the brothership. 100%. It's just like these small relationships that have developed that you relate to these people who are, it's sort of like 95, 96 when the internet started out, and you talk to someone online and you can trust who they are and you confide in that person. And here we are, we're confining those people. But now it's like you meet these people and they're actually who you are. You're not being catfished by anybody in the group. It's like we have these legitimate relationships with them. And it's like I recorded with Ariel today and I said, man, I love you. You are so awesome. And he's like, I love you too.
Yeah.
And we had this big conversation that's real serious, and I'm going to air it as its own individual podcast because it's serious. So it's about racism and whatever. So I don't want to tie that in with anyone's interview because I don't want people to skip over and miss an interview with someone. Right. But, and it's like, here's this guy I never would have met. Our paths never would have crossed. But we met in this group, and he always posts the best stuff about food and whatnot, and he's funny, right? So I was like, so I asked Zaha if he thought about doing a podcast, and he's like, oh, I'm too busy. And so I just looked at Ariel, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the guy. I was like, hey man, you want to do a podcast? He's like, sure. I don't know how to do it. I don't think I'm a good talker. And every week when we talk, he's like, man, I laugh too much. I sound dumb. I'm like, dude, you are perfect. So much better than I am. I spend so much time editing my own stuff because I sound dumb. But him, I don't have to edit at all. So I get it. It's like you have these relationships. But when my wife and I went to the Fan Fest before, and I didn't know how it worked. So basically I just walked in. I paid like the whatever the entrance fee was. I didn't pay the to meet everybody, and I didn't know how anything worked. Nothing. I just walked in and I was just kind of dumb. And I looked and saw Ricky Steamboat, who I'd met like 2 weeks earlier in Home Depot in Seminole, Florida. And he was all dusty and obviously had been working on his house or something. And I saw him and he was talking to a guy at Home Depot, like a guy that worked there. And so I said, I stood by and I said, I'm going to meet this dude. And when he got finished with this conversation, I said, Mr. Steamboat, I just want to tell you, I'm a big fan. And so I came to the group and I posted and said, hey, I just met Ricky Steamboat at the Home Depot. And some guy in the group said, pics or it didn't happen. And I was like, you asshole, I'm not really the, hey, bro, let's take a selfie in Home Depot, especially when you see someone that and when I saw him and I made the conversation, I could tell he was like brushing off and he was not comfortable, right? He did not want to take a picture, and he knows that's what people do, right? So I said, hey, look, I'm not like the hey bro, let's take a selfie type person. But then I saw him, but because I didn't know how this whole thing worked, I didn't know if he's going to go and try and push gimmicks on me. I didn't know if like I had to have a ticket to get an autograph. I didn't know how any of that worked. So basically on that first one, my wife and I just walked around, looked at everybody. I told her some stories, and then we went at Glory Days and had lunch. Thankfully, this time we walked in and I knew how it worked. I'd asked Barry. I was like, dude, I was clueless last time. Just tell me how this one works. He told me. But then we met Chris Zaha, and I won't repeat the things that he said, but I hope that they stick with me forever. People always go, I'll never forget it. They probably will forget it. I hope I never forget the things that Chris Zaha said to me, because it gripped me and my wife in and included us, and he was so welcoming and loving and a nice guy. And so from then on, we were good, right? We knew how everything worked. There was cool people there. And of course, this is all during the pandemic. So it's like some people had on masks. He and his kids had on masks. We had on masks. And so we felt cool about it. But that first meeting with Chris Zaha was very meaningful, and I'll always appreciate him for making us feel welcome at the Fan Fest. And that actually speaks to how cool the brothership is. you know, and I've given credit to the moderators before, but it's also credit to the brothership for just not being assholes, just being nice people. And so he made us feel welcome, and it was really, 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 really cool.
Yeah, no, and you can kind of tell that it's like when Ryan was going through some stuff in the group, and I'd reached out to him personally, and you know, and it's just like a lot of times when you're just going through little stuff yourself, you're like,
Ryan Damon, you mean?
Yeah.
And
then you know, I pinged him directly and like, hey, you know, hope everything's going good. If you need someone to talk to, and it's just like, I have done that because Chris had done that for someone within the group, and I was just like, you know what, I'm like, that's a good idea. You know, it's like when someone's hurting, you know, try and be that ear and that shoulder to cry on if need be, and it's just, you know, that's fun. That's fun, and you know what you get out of that, that's not measurable, and it's really, really neat that our group does that for just everybody.
It's weird, right? Because we're men and we're not supposed to have feelings and care about other people.
Yeah.
But here we are, right? We're supposed to make fun of people that are weak.
Well,
you know?
Well, the funny thing is like, well, I've always been I've been on the guy on the other side of the tracks. I will do the shirt off my back for people. I'm more of a helper, and that's probably speaking to, you know, my upbringing and all the other stuff where, you know, it's like, you need some help, I'm going to give you some help, whether you deserve it or not. I don't care about that. You know, it's like, you try your best to be, you know, we all have our bad days, but at the same time, it's just like, if you put your best foot forward and you really truly believe in giving them something that's going to help, you know, that to me builds, you know, that gives a memory, or that gives something to someone else that makes them feel a lot better about themselves. And you don't know how dark of a place they're in, or maybe they're not, or they just had a bad day, and that just turned their day around.
So my wife is like the most caring, loving, generous person I've ever met in my entire life, and I'm very lucky to have her. And so last year we bought my father-in-law a tractor, you know, that's got like a front end it's got all the attachments. It's John Deere, so a front end loader, it's got a scoop, it's got a back thing on it. And with the snow they had just recently in Massachusetts, they live in Central Mass, just like an hour south of Worcester, and Mimi, you know, his wife, my mother-in-law, sent videos of him on it, and it was really cool to see him do it. And so I talked to him, and I said, hey, did you get your tractor out? You know, knowing that he already did. Oh, yeah. And I said, I saw you plowing a little bit on the road. That was pretty cool. And he said, yeah. And so he's old. He's like, I don't know, let's just say close to 70, and he's got rheumatoid arthritis. He's on the Humira, and Humira basically has like saved his life. It'll probably take life off of him, but he's able to do things. Like, he's got the rheumatoid where like the hands cripple, and it's really, really bad. The folks in his family that inherit it, right? But he gets around, and he's to see an old person who, when I say old, elderly, who is kind and gentle, but you know that they have worked their ass off their whole life, and you know, has a little bit of that hardness in them. He grew up in a junkyard like my father and like me. But so anyway, I said, yeah, did you get out there? Yeah, you know, I went to the neighbors, I helped them clear the paths. And so it's like, here's this guy who is so thoughtful of the other people around him, you know, that he's going to go and help them. And, you know, even people he probably, some other folks he doesn't have good relationships with that live nearby that are family members, but he went and helped all these people clear their paths because he's the guy that's got the tractor, you know, and that's what he did, you know, and that's just kind of what I imagine with you, right? It's like, if you're young and you are shoveling snow. Oh, go do the old lady over there. She can't do it, right?
Yeah, it was more so. Yeah, my dad still does that. Like my neighbors, he'll blow out a path, use the old snow blower, and blow out his driveway, then a couple of the neighbors' driveway, and he'd do that when my mom was a registered nurse. Would just kind of like blow out a path from the two car detached garage in the back, and then nice little path all the way to the front door, or at least a path from there into the Four Seasons porch. But that's kind of it's the old Minnesota nice. It's very cliche, but at the same time, there are people that do live it and really take it to heart, where it's like, it's not just for where you're from. It's, you take things that you want to give to someone who, for whatever reason, they're not having such a good time or anything else, and you kind of, put your arm around them, or you try and put a smile on their face, where it's you feel the need to kind of you're kind of compelled to do it, even though it's like it's not like you needed to do it, you wanted to do it. And that to me is kind of a really important thing to do. So, just always been a thing for me.
Having that mentality changed my life. When I first got into real estate, so this was 2015, I had left this company, so my wife was one of the owners of this company, and they sold it to this other company that was much larger. And the company that bought it did not give a crap about the employees. It was all the bottom line, how much money they made, and I absolutely hated it. So immediately I planned my exit, and I said, well, I'm going to get into real estate. Well, the week after I scheduled my class, so I started the following week, the bigwigs from Charlotte came up that bought, and they had this meeting. And basically, I didn't realize it at the time, but they had separated us into two groups, one in one building and the other in the other. And there was about 125 of us employees. And the people that were in my building were told, you're being let go, and you have 6 months. And I was like, immediately, it's like, oh, I don't care. I got a plan. But I looked around the room, and I could see that there was people who just left other jobs. There were single parents. There were, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? And that broke my heart, right? So 6 months later, so they gave us 6 months, and they said, and we're going to close it down in, let's say, June. And actually, I think it was June. And I got into real estate and went to the company that I was working with, and I told them, hey, look, this is what's really important to me. I don't want to be a number. I want to be a person. I want to treat customers right. And, they sold me on joining there. And I realized that when it was too late, after I'd already joined them and given them money. And I was so pissed off because I realized I'd been sold. And so it took about a year, and I left. And once I left, I said, I'm not the person who's like, everything that they did in real estate was like, how many sales you got, how many people you're going to have. And after I left the company, I knew where I was going. There was a guy that I went to church with who was my small group leader, who it was the nicest guy. He was so nice. And he was I don't think he's doing it anymore, but he was a traveling in-home physical therapist. And so I said, Brian, can I come and work for your company? He said, oh, yeah, absolutely. And so basically in North Carolina, the way that it is like you don't work for the company. You just hang your license there. You just say that that's who you're working under, and unless you have your own company, right? And so I did my thing and got successful, and I realized, and I charge less for the listings. So normally you charge 3%. We charged 1%, and my business just exploded. And I realized that that's exactly what I needed to do. Like, I realized everybody I interviewed with in between that time, and I talked to even after I knew I was going with him, I still talked to these people, right? I wanted to see what they said about their company, and every conversation was this: "Hey, Frankie, how many sales you going to do this year? How much gross income do you expect to make? How many gross sales you expect to make?" And it was like they didn't care about me as a person, what motivated me, what would make me better. It was just all how much could I make them. And so I went and did my own thing, and I found my niche, and I loved it. Knocked it out of the park. Had a great time. I helped people out because this is 2015, 2016, and the people that I was helping were people who bought in '05 and '06 and '07 and '08 who overpaid for their house. So now they were trying to sell it and make some money or not lose money. And so that really made a huge difference for me because, and I just told someone recently, I'm like, look, I'm not going to go knock on doors and beg people to, give me their business. I want to help people. And if people can't see that I want to help them and save them money, and I want to do the right thing by people, then I have no interest in going and doing it, right? And so, my point is that I took all this time to realize that what motivates me is actually helping people. I'm not motivated by the money because, number one, now where I am, my wife is the breadwinner. Before I was with my wife, it was me and the dog, and our bills were paid. So I was good with it. I didn't live in a nice house. I didn't drive a Maserati or the new convertible Mustang, but my bills were paid. So what motivated me and what still motivates me to this day is I have to be able to help people. I don't want to making the money doesn't matter because I'm just going to the checks I get, I just take and give to the wife. She puts it in the account and I don't need anything.
Yeah, no. I mean, my job, I work for a global help desk for a, multinational company, in the middle of Silicon Valley. I help people every day, and I level, I level with people. I, empathize with them, even though a lot of the industry is based on a lot of first world problems. Trust me, you deal with a lot of personalities. And it's just like, sales guys that, they're just there to hit quotas. And it's just like, it's an empty thank you, or it's just like, thanks. And they're on to the next thing. And, you kind of, but also it's, you kind of, like you were saying, you find your niche and you find things that you're like really, really good at and you enjoy it. Like the money is immaterial. Like for the longest time, you always get in the rat race of, oh yeah, I just need to make all this money and everything's just going to be happy. And it's like, no, money. If money were all happy, if I was making $1 million a year, I don't know if I'd be happier than making, 100,000 or,
right,
100,000. I mean, there's so much other things, it's like, I enjoy taking my daughter to the park after work or doing other things to where it's like, or watching classic wrestling or going to a concert or just being away from things where it's like you can kind of bring your center down a little bit and kind of find yourself again and really just make things that make life really fun, where it's like, we all see the bad stuff. I mean, now especially, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but a lot of bad things out there, but also there's a lot of good that can happen from it too. And if you can look at things in a different light and see things in a different way and help people along the way, to me that's really great.
Well, that's the thing about the brothership, and for those that don't know, that might be hearing this the first time, brothership, the Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdger and Berry Facebook group, is that it's so supportive, and like there's I guess rarely, I'll say never because I never see it, but rarely a negative word said to someone else. But like if you're like, oh man, I just had the crappiest day, there's a ton of guys going, hey man, you got this, right? If you go, hey, I think I'm getting sick, hey, you got this, you can beat it, right? It's these guys supporting you, and then they'll be in your DMs and you'll have these conversations. And I think that's so important, right? Because you don't need the people that say you can't do it. You can't do it. You're over your head or whatever. You need the people that say, hey, you can do it, and we got your back. We'll support you. And I mean, that is the cool thing. And then you could talk about whatever that you like. You talked about baseball. Talked about Meeting the Sky. You talk about Bruce Springsteen. You talk about, there's guys that have all that in common with you.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like with Jeff being a Vikings fan, and of anything outside of people I grew up with, and then there's Joe Christie too, who Joe, kick cancer's ass, please, because I never do not want to hear a freaking Barry Rose crap joke in our Facebook group because that just is brilliant on so many levels. And I mean, Joe, his family's from southern Minnesota, and he lives in I believe upstate New York, and he's fighting cancer, and I'm hoping the best for him, and he's fighting hard, and but things like that where I jokingly campaigned Jeff. I'm like, we need a bad Viking loss episode of Breaking Kayfabe. I'm like, if you need me, I will pour my heart out for 2 hours about every painful loss that this club has gone through. And it's just like, it's funny, where he's from, and, a cold weather team that's been around for, 60 years and has gone through the gut punches of like probably every big game outside of probably Detroit, the Detroit Lions, Cleveland Indians, or what are they now? They're not the Cleveland Commanders. That's Washington, the Washington Commanders. What a great name. And stuff like that, to where it's like in big games, we just choke. Mm-hmm. And it's bad. I mean, I remember the 1998 NFC Championship game where we're double-digit favorites at home, and we lose to Atlanta Falcons team that had no business coming in and beating us, and we take a knee with 2 minutes left and lose in overtime, and it's things happen. Then 2000, we go into the Meadowlands, get rolled up 41 donut, and you're like, and you're so you're so with the team. And it's like, if we ever do it, I'm flying to see Jeff, and I'll be just like, Jeff, we did it. This is the greatest thing. This is the greatest thing ever. I joke, if they ever won the whole thing, I would have to be, no one could talk to me for a week because I could not come back in polite society because of the high I'd be on after it's done. And, it's like in 2009 where we, pretty much had the Saints where we wanted them. We lost it, at the Superdome, and then Jamie Ward will love this because his Philadelphia Eagles beating us, and this is almost 4 years ago now. We go into Philly, we score on the first drive, and then get absolutely annihilated the rest of the game. I'm watching Terrence Newman having his legs in quicksand while Alshon Jeffrey is going the other way for a touchdown. And I'm in Palm Springs, just my head in my hands. I'm like, they did it again. They got me again. And, it's stuff like that. It's as a fan like that, where you want it so hard. And sometimes you get to the point where it's comical. You can laugh about it. You can joke. Like you'll know, like Jeff is very cynical about the Minnesota Vikings at times. I can totally understand that, because it's like, that's most Viking fans of the last, 40 and 50 years. Been through 4 Super Bowl losses, 4 NFC Championship losses. Jim Marshall running the wrong way, however you want to put it. He just knows. And that's a really cool thing, which I'd have never thought I would get that with someone outside of the state. like with friends of mine that I grew up with. We know that because we lived it, but Jeff has lived it too, just not in the same area, that's cool. That's really awesome stuff. And with my Bruce connection, it was funny how many brother shippers were into him and all the other stuff. And I mean, and that's neat. I'd sent bootlegs to a couple. I was cleaning out some old stuff and I had some left over, and some said they were fans, and I'm like, you know what, there are times where I'm like, I'll have burnout and I'll just be like, you know what, I feel like doing something nice for somebody because it's going to make me feel better, and just send them out like, hey, just give me your address, PM me your address, I'll take care of it, send it out, which is really great. And they come back and give thank you, and it's not me blowing my own horn, it's more of I'm happy I can give back. And it's like things that gave me so much joy are going to give someone else a lot more joy too as well. But, that's the fun part. And, things like that just continue to make me try and be a better person. But at the same time, get to have those special moments with, it doesn't matter if I've met you or not. That's just really cool.
Yeah, that's the thing about the brothership. That is it. You said it absolutely perfect. So I actually grew up a Minnesota Vikings fan, and I'm not exactly sure how. I don't know whether it was either Fran Tarkenton or if it was because they're purple and yellow and white, which the Lakers were my basketball team. But I cut that out because I hate NBA. I like college, and I don't watch the NFL anymore because I worked in restaurants and sports bars and on the nightclub, and I just was forced to watch it. And it's like, once you're made to do something, you do not want to do it anymore. So I don't watch football. Absolutely hate it. I can have it on the background, but I can't sit there and watch it. But I'll always that I'll be a Vikings fan. And if you remember playing in the video games and the late 90s, 2000s, it's like you could throw anywhere to Randy Moss and he would catch it.
Yeah, no, the '98 Vikings was probably as far as fandom outside of, I'd say, the 2009 team was it. That was like the year we had the team. Still the only 15-1 team that never made the Super Bowl, which is still laughable at this point. But I remember it because I was moving a guy I knew to Minneapolis during the first game against Tampa Bay at the Metrodome.
So we're talking February. You're moving someone.
Well, this is September. So
okay.
This is the beginning of the 1998 season.
Oh, okay.
And he's moving into I wouldn't call it the hood of Minneapolis, but you're talking probably in between the nice and not so nice part of Minneapolis, more on the not so nice part. This old brick apartment building. And, he decides to move on a damn Sunday and before GPS. So I get lost half the day and blah, blah, blah. But then I watch the highlights and I'm looking at Randy Moss and I'm like, whoa, what the hell? Like, this guy is, legit. And then, I went to 3 games that year. I remember going to the week 3 game against the Lions and then going to the game against the Bengals. And then I think, what was the other game I went to? It's escaping me right now, but just watching him, and my brother had the greatest line for it because, Brad Johnson gets hurt early in the year and is pretty much out for the year. And then Randall Cunningham, who had been pretty much forgotten after he left the Philadelphia Eagles, comes in and is our backup quarterback. And then my brother coined it. As far as going to Randy Moss, he goes, Jesus, go deep. And then literally he just throw the ball. And I'd come up with it too. I'd be like, the bomb to Moss, the mathematical play that cannot be stopped. And I don't care what kind of equation you come up, it's going to find a way to get the ball and just score a touchdown. I mean, and it was great watching the Monday night Packer games where, we'd whoop up on Brett Favre. And it's just like, it's so much fun with that. Those are things that I'll always have fun reminiscing about. But like I said, the heartbreak is always going to be there. But you have the good memories too, which I always like to bring up too as well when I can. But it's like at some point I may keep pestering Jeff. I'm like, okay, we're doing a Vikings episode. I don't care if it's Patreon. I'll put freaking money to the Patreon and be on the episode and give as many stories as I can to do that, because to me it's just like it's so fun. And I mean, to me, like a sports one would be a lot of fun where people could just give like their great sporting moments from their teams. I mean, to me, it doesn't need to be Viking centric. It could be, it's just, that's who I am. I mean, to me, those are things that are just a lot of fun and people can identify with it. It's like listening to Stick to Wrestling when McAdam comes up with something sports related kind of in the interim in between the wrestling stuff, which is really neat. And everyone has their the crazy story of their club doing something.
It drives me crazy when McAdam will say, okay, we're going to stop talking about wrestling, so if you want to turn it off. It's like, no. Like, he's a good talker and the conversation's interesting. We don't want to turn it off. You just keep talking about whatever, the Vols or whatever. So we're going to do what we're going to call the Broken Kayfabe birthday bash, or the Broken Kayfabe something bash, where we have a bunch of different people on and talk about a topic. And you know what? If I can get Jeff to commit, we'll definitely do a sports Vikings related thing. I don't understand why the Vikings are not everyone's underdog team
right now. Well, considering after the Chicago Cubs won the World Series, I claim they're the most cursed franchise in probably pro sports, because I mean, to me, it's like, if you look back, I mean, to me, the only thing I do not like about the Vikings is they took out the outdoor element. They've been in a dome and and an enclosed stadium now for you're looking at 40 years, because the dome opened in 1982, the year I was born, and my dad had season tickets to the old Met Stadium where the Mall of America sits now. So the Met Center, where the North Stars used to play, and Metropolitan Stadium were in that area that got knocked down and essentially became the Mall of America. So my dad and my uncle had shared season tickets, and the colder it got, the more tickets he got. And then my dad,
really?
Yeah, no, he talk about taking my mom to games, and it'd be just below zero. And I mean, he can go look for clips where you get playoff games where the Los Angeles Rams of the 70s would come to Minneapolis, come to Bloomington, where it was at, which is a suburb, and they would be running in and out back to the locker room to freaking get warmed up, because the Southern California, any Californian here, I mean, I joke with them, because most are either from Hawaii, the Philippines, other places where it's like very, very warm. So like it gets below like 60 or even 55. They're in parkas and everything else. And I look at them, I'm in shorts and a t-shirt mostly year round. And some of them have looked at me like, I remember dropping my kid off at school, and I look at them like, a little chilly today, huh? I'm like, that's a little brisk. It's not so bad. And it's stuff like that. But you just see them go back and forth. And then Bud Grant is so great, where it's like, he willed his guys to play well and also commanded respect. And it's sad he never got a championship, but he did so much. I mean, he's the greatest Viking coach there ever will be. I don't think anyone will surpass him, even if I think someone wins the Super Bowl, I mean, which will be a high honor. But yeah, no, the coolest thing is when we had that playoff game. It was in between when the Metrodome was getting tear down and US Bank Stadium, which is the stadium they're in now, which is pretty much right in the same vicinity as the Metrodome. And it's 9 degrees. And he's talking to one of the higher ups in the NFL. He's like, he takes off his jacket and he's in just khakis and a polo shirt. And he goes, "You'll have to excuse me. We have to teach these Seattle Seahawks fans how we play football." Goes out for the coin toss. He's out literally in a hat, the Vikings hat. He's coming out just in short sleeves. And I'm like, you are absolutely the man. I love you. I embrace you as one human being to another. And it's just the coolest thing. It's just like, yes, you are a badass. You are this, you are that. Like any term you want to put on it, that was it. And he did that for the coin toss. And I mean, we lost the game, but still, it was like one of those moments you just don't forget. And, you know, he's just, and the funny thing is, he never did it, but his teams always played hard. His defenses were great. His offenses were great. It's just when it came to the Super Bowl, it wasn't meant to be. But no, though, that's just the cool stuff.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, a couple of questions. So you mentioned your dog. What type of dog do you have?
No, I don't. My in-laws have a dog. I don't have a dog.
Okay, well, what do they have?
My in-laws have two American Eskimo Basset Hounds, Nabby and Ollie, after two of the San Jose Sharks goalie, Nabokov, and no, Ollie is not. No, Ollie they named differently. I take that back. Nabby was the goalie for the San Jose Sharks for a long time. And then it was funny, they're brothers, so they came from the same litter. And Ollie used to be named Butters because the family they got him from couldn't take care of him, and they went up to, I think, a couple hours north. And this is when I started dating my wife. I'd come to visit because we ended up doing long distance for 2 years, but and you know, they got him and he was this little tubby thing, and they're really, really good dogs. Not the smartest dogs. We joke with them, but at the same time they just like to bark and, you know, play around and stuff like that. But they're great dogs. Just these little Baskimos, and have a great. My mother-in-law spoils the hell out of them.
Yeah, you just said the word I was going to go for, the Baskimo. I just Googled them to see what they look like.
Yeah, no, like Ollie needed some work because he got fattened up, and you know, my in-laws, you know, neighborhood is pretty quiet. You know, a lot of, you know, 1- and 2-story homes. Your prototypical California kind of like house, like the Eichlers, and then the 2-story Western style haciendas, and stuff like that. So it's a pretty quiet neighborhood, and you know, they take their walks here and all their stuff. But you know, they misbehave here and do stupid stuff. But no, they're lovely. Having my daughter as like a pet and everything else rolled into one. It's just like, but no, they're great.
So at the end of September, we got a new dog. We got a Shorkie, Shih Tzu Yorkie, and my wife absolutely loves it. It's like my wife's infant daughter. When we go to sleep at night, she has her arm around the dog and is holding it, you know, like this, you know. The dog is there, and every single night, and she says, "Winnie, get in your spot," and Winnie's in the spot. And then the dog is the sweetest dog, and my wife absolutely loves it. You know, it's so the only dog that we had was my dog Max that I brought here, and he's 12, can barely walk. He is got the separation anxiety from me. So if I leave and go out of the room, he starts freaking out. And he, you know, he's a difficult dog. Not that he makes a mess or tears things up, but he just whines. So like at dinner tonight, we were trying to eat and he's whining. He had a whole plate full of food, but he's whining. So I had to get up, take him, give him some with my hand and try to feed him. And so getting Winnie has just made a huge difference. And my wife just absolutely adores this dog. Just absolute. And she is the cutest. She is 10 pounds and just so cute. So, and of course, everybody in the Facebook group love dogs and post their dogs. And so here's another question for you. So, what is your favorite Springsteen album?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd probably say, if you put a gun to my head right now, I would probably say The River double album. It's like in the, it's funny. It's in the middle of what I like to call, it's going into Rambo Bruce, even though there's Nebraska in between there, which is a very stark and, acoustic album, which a lot of people, even if they're not fans of Bruce, will gravitate to. Like I always say, like, don't listen to Nebraska while drinking or having a firearm or anything close to you, because it's stark and depressing and different. Where it's and there's some great songs. Actually, I think one of the songs was made into a movie that Sean Penn directed. I think it's called The Indian Runner. It's a Highway Patrolman is the name of the song. And they have the character actor David Morse and Viggo Mortensen as brothers, and it goes through the story of the song, and it's really great. There's Johnny 99, there's Mansion on a Hill, there's Used Cars, which is kind of him talking about his dad buying these crappy used cars and stuff like that. But not to go in too deep, but the River it captures the essence of like E Street Band shows at that time. And I mean, the tour is amazing. And that's the thing, Bruce Springsteen and the Grateful Dead, have bootlegs that people, have have pretty much gone through the years and have gone through other people, and variations of where, I had probably at one point, I had like 3 or 4 like gigantic CD cases of like tours and shows. Like it was, I'd listen to it so much. I was hooked. And when you get hooked on something, you keep going. When you have nothing else, it's just like, that's kind of your tunnel vision where you go to. But yeah, no, The River is pretty awesome. And I mean, if there was like a kind of a one, like a 1B would be Tunnel of Love, which was after Born in the USA, which is like the end of the 80s, and then he really changed after that, where it's like the E Street Band broke up and went into a different direction with a different set of musicians into the 90s. And he kind of, we were having the discussion because I think Benji had, his album of the day, and, I'll comment here and there, but I'll always let other people do it, because I won't go in too hard on it, because it's like I can go on for hours. Like I could literally do a 4 to 5 hour, talk about it. And, I try and keep it as concise as possible. Like at one point, it's like my wife was like, Jesus, literally, like, I know you've done a lot, but it's a bit much. I did with one of her girlfriends we were dating, and she was transfixed. She got it. But it's just like, yeah, I mean, my travels and stuff and all the things with that, and I enjoy talking about it, but I know it can get at times, because it's like when you're into something, you don't want to overdo it. And it's just like, because when someone wants to get into something and they've heard everything about it, sometimes it's like, okay, I've heard everything about it. Wasn't what I was it wasn't up to my expectations. But yeah, no, to kind of, put a bookend on it is The River, between, the title track, which is, about his sister getting pregnant very young. And, it's just really, really, really good stuff. Some good rockers, and then some really good songs like Drive All Night, Wreck on the Highway, Stolen Car. There's so many great songs that you can call back to. And, when I saw him in the Garden, when this was in 2009, where he did the entire album front to back that was probably a 3.5 hour show, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But that was so much fun, and it was just like upbeat. It brought you down, it brought you back up, and at the end, you kind of just, it stands where it stands. And to me, it's just like and a lot of Bruce fans would probably say that's his zenith, because a lot of when Born in the USA came out, you're in the mid 80s, and I mean, I was 2 at the time, but my introduction early on, before I really got into him, was the hits, was the Born in the USA stuff, and that was just everywhere. He's the big, outside of probably Prince and Michael Jackson in the mid 80s, he could do no wrong. And then he kind of drifted back into, he was in the middle of, he was like the best kept secret, but more people knew about him. That's mostly like 70s and early 80s Bruce Springsteen.
So recently, actually this week, I decided to look up the history of the Counting Crows, who are also a Bay Area band. And I've always liked, the first couple of albums. I think they kind of lost me on the third, but maybe that was just a different place that I was in my life. But that first album, I've been listening to as I take the kids back in from school. August and everything after was just amazing. And I watched their Behind the Music. And man, it was so cool to hear about Adam Duritz writing the songs, and just how he was, and how he had a hard time with success, and how in one of the songs, I think it was in Perfect Blue Buildings, he says, on the corner of Virginia and Aloma, and that was actually where he lived. And he says they put out that album, and then one day he's looking out his window, and there's people outside of his window. And how do you deal with that, right? I mean, how do you deal with people crossing this line of, hey, here's where the guy lives. Oh my gosh, there he is in the window, right? And so some of us, I have a hard time like with songs of understanding what the whole thing's about, right? If it doesn't tell a story from start to beginning. But like some of Adam Duritz's lyrics, it's like you may understand, a girl who wants to move to Nashville and hopes she meets a boy who looks like Elvis. Everyone can relate to, that line. So I get it. You talk about these songs and the passion for them and understanding the storytelling. But then also you just want to hear something that is driving home, and it's, not about the lyrics. It's, a heavy guitar chord. But you mentioned The River. So The River has 2 of my 4 favorite Bruce Springsteen songs on it. And when you mentioned you're a Bruce Springsteen fan, I started thinking about it. So number 1, not my number 1 in the order of my favorite, but Dancing in the Dark.
That's more Born in the USA, but that's a little bit later.
But it was on The River.
It was actually 2 albums later. The River.
It was on The River?
No, it wasn't on The River. It was the.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Tunnel of Love.
Yeah. Tunnel of Love was after Born in the USA. So mostly Tunnel of Love was more of. That's a whole different story in general. Like very personal songs, and about. I think he's more like. He's never really outright said it was about his first failed marriage, because, at the time, he was dating, a famous actress. Well, I wouldn't say famous, but an actress, Julianne Phillips, who was in Fletch 2, I think. And as the next year went through, then he got caught with one of his, singer in the band, who eventually is his wife now. And, they divorced after that. But realistically, it's one of those things that, it's deeply personal. But yeah, the river has, I think there's some rockers on the second disc, and then most of them are on, some of them are on the first one as well.
So yeah, Dance in the Dark, Tunnel of Love, and then my other favorite that's on Tunnel of Love is Brilliant Disguise.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a rendition of that I have in my iTunes or whatever on the hard drive there, where he says, you don't know what I want to say? How does he how he prefaces the song? Because he says something. He's like, if you have the need to.
Yeah, no, I'm either thinking of the end of it, the end of the song, God Have Mercy on the Man Who Doubts What He's Sure Of, which is the end of the song, which is very good. Like, if you hear the live version, which is really great, if you're a Springsteen fan or you really want to hear it, YouTube it. I know they have an archive. He has an archive live series. You can go, buy it too. But then there's also, there's so many lyrics.
So this, he says before he starts the song of Brilliant Disguise, is, hey, if you feel the need to clap along, please don't. It will totally mess me up.
Yeah, no, I totally know. Yeah, probably one of the acoustical numbers, but
yeah, it is. It's acoustic, and you get it and you feel it, like, in the lyrics of that song, I hold you in my arms, and it's completely different than what you hear on the radio when you hear just him standing there playing, right?
Yeah, if you could probably find the music video. The music video is actually, it's so simple, and it just slowly focuses in on his face the whole time. So he's at a kitchen table, and then it just kind of continues to go in until it just goes to his face, essentially. And it's really well done. It's very simple, but that's pretty much a lot of what Tunnel of Love, at least the second half of Tunnel of Love, is, to where it gets very dark, like the dark parts of Love, and then the first half is a little bit more upbeat. But after I'd say like 3, 4, or 5, probably 4 songs, then it just goes kind of down, and it just kind of takes you where he's at. And the character in general, if you did it like front to back, goes from the highest of highs, and then the kind of things he's going through, and then at the end just feeling totally defeated, but also having a little bit of hope, but there's not much of it. It's just really, really, like, if the last 2 songs, which I don't think get enough love in that album, which is When You're Alone and Valentine's Day, like, you listen, when you're into it, and you just read the lyrics, and you'll understand kind of how just crazy this man, 4 years ago, was like the biggest thing on the planet, and he comes up with something like that, which to me is always, you always look at people that you think that they're going to do something and they're going to continue on that path. No, he did a complete 180 and did something that was deeply personal. And, it's probably why a lot of his fans have stayed and kind of make him feel so genuine. And that, to me, is kind of the staying power of him.
Carrie Silk had mentioned bands that he talks a lot about music, and he says, there's, and I can't think of the names or the albums. He's like, there's albums that were not designed to have singles. They were designed, this album is an experience, right? It's like you take the whole thing in, you play it from start to end. I sort of think of the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, right, where everybody's like, oh, it lines up perfectly with the Wizard of Oz. Whether it does or whether it doesn't, you can play it all in a line, and you sort of have a story that's going on with Dark Side of the Moon. And so he talks about, there's bands that the albums weren't designed, well, this is going to be our single. This is going to be, the next single. It's, hey, this is the album, and it's best enjoyed in the album form.
Yeah, definitely. It's like nowadays there's how many bands can you actually say have like an album concept? And now it's like if it's your band, you'll listen to the whole thing. But if you don't know the band, you're probably going to go to the single or what's on iTunes that it's, I'll plop down my $1.29 and have this, and I'll be bumping this.
Right. My next Springsteen song is Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And when I moved here and got the kids, I wanted to show the kids that video, but I could not find the video because that video is very similar to John Mellencamp's I Saw Mommy Kiss Santa Claus. It's like he's got all of his band on the stage, and he's like, hey Clarence, and Steve Van Zant's there and they're playing. But man, that is a tremendous Christmas song. One of my favorites.
Yeah, no, they just released the show that he did the first recording of it from 1975, which I listened to it and it's just great. But also subsequent tours, and I've been fortunate enough to hear it live too. And Merry Christmas Baby, which is another one he did. I got to hear those live, which is like, it's fun, it's just like one of those things. It's a Christmas staple, like irregardless of, what you feel about the holidays. It's just a nice peppy song. And it's just, really, really great.
And the last one is Because the Night.
Yeah. The song that Patti Smith had for the longest time. And then they kind of, Bruce, he kind of just kept it for his live stuff. But, Patti Smith was the one who I think put it on an album, and because their lyrics are somewhat different. And I know that 10,000 Maniacs did a cover of it as well later on, and that's the one I always remembered before I became a Bruce fan. And then I heard his version, from the late 70s and then even into the 80s. And then, probably, I think the last time was probably at this point, probably maybe 6 years ago at this point. I think my last Bruce show was in 2016, but which is, seems like an eternity now, but it really isn't in the grand scheme of things. But no, Because the Night is a great song, and seeing it live and is always fun because
but he's never recorded it, right?
He did record it, but he just never put it on an album. He actually put it on subsequent other albums. I think it was written in between Darkness on the Edge of Town and The River, and it just never made it. Because it's like, I think I commented this, like if you look at what he had wrote from 1976 to like 1983, 84, I mean, he could have made 3 or 4 more albums of the stuff that he had, which is just, it is great stuff. I mean, and to me, if you really dig deep into it, it's completely awesome.
Oh, it is on Apple.
Yeah, no, I mean, most of his stuff, I mean,
The Promise.
Yeah, no, that was the Darkness box set, because that's the thing. Before, I think he's done at this point, I think like 3 sets of like the remastered album and then the outtakes from those albums. So he actually did one for The River, which is called Tithes That Bind. Darkness he did, which was The Promise. There's some really good stuff there too. And then Born to Run he did as well. And that was all subsequently around the time when the albums turned about 30 years old. And those are all good stuff. I mean, you want to go down the Springsteen wormhole, there's lots of stuff you can you can find. And, there's the community is very much, quote unquote, we take care of our own. That's no joke.
Has he ever done a Storytellers where he talks about the
Yeah, he did. That was during 2005. They did on VH1. He did a Storytellers. It was mostly stuff from the album he had released at that time, Devils and Dust. And I think he did a few songs that were some of his older stuff. Because when you can kind of get cranky Bruce during the acoustic stuff, because it's like he's so. That's where some people will get kind of a little miffed, where it's just like, oh, he's just big timing us because, all this other stuff. And, and I can understand it, because it's like, it's like, we're coming here to enjoy music, we'll make some noise, but, it's not going to be a complete, joyous ruckus that like an E Street Band show would be. But, to me, you'll get the obligatory person yelling out "Glory Days" or something like that, and Bruce will probably make a comment. I know that happened at one of my shows I went to in St. Paul, but it's just those are things that you just kind of you'll kind of understand when you'll see the two different sides of them, where it's like it's a hell of a lot more personal when it's acoustic, and there's some definite differences, but also you kind of get more out of it, and you can kind of differentiate the two.
Mm-hmm. Cool, man. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to?
No. I mean, for the most part, I droned on pretty good, and no, I kind of knew what I was going to talk about originally. Like, I mean, literally, you could have done like a 3-hour Springsteen podcast with me, and that would have been enough to probably fill 2 episodes for you, depending on how much you're editing out. But for the most part, yeah.
I try to only edit out my ums and my.
Oh no, that trust me, with me, I hate hearing my voice back recorded, because it sounds so different to me. Like how I sound right now, like if I hear myself back, it's a completely different thing than what I'm hearing right now, which is weird. But it's one of those things that I've just kind of learned to accept, where it's like, well, I'll do an impression and it sounds exactly as I think it sounds. And then, but my regular voice is like, who the fuck is this guy? And I'm just like, okay, I'll just work with that. But no, it's just fun to reminisce about stuff too, because it's like a lot of that for me, the ums, the likes, because you get self-conscious after a while, and you want to like it. Exactly, it just did it. Where you want to like, and I did it again, where you want to find that medium where it's like, I don't sound like a complete buffoon, and I'm not going through the motions, where it's like, okay, sure, we're going, and you go from one step to the other, and it's like you're having a coherent thought and you're not rambling on. But I totally understand that.
Every episode, I edit and I edit until I'm like, okay, I'm sick of editing myself. And so then I stop editing myself and say, okay, I'm done. But Ariel will go, oh man, I should stop. I laugh too much. I do this too much. I'm like, dude, you sound amazing. I don't have to edit you at all. But me, it's like I keep editing myself till I just get pissed off and I go, oh, screw it. We've only got, 60 downloads a week. So who cares? I'm not trying to make money. I'm just trying to record the voices of the brothership and put it out there so that we have it. And, and one day your daughter's going to Google your name and she's going to see Matt Crowder was on a podcast, and he was talking about things that he loved and this group that he was in, and she could play this for her kids and her kids could play it for her kids. And that's one of the reasons why I just love doing this.
Yeah, no, and it's fun too. It's like I can joke to myself now. I've been on pretty much every medium there is known to man. Like I've been on pay-per-view, even though for like a little second, I don't care if it's 30 seconds. I've been on Japanese TV. I've been in the local. I've had a little story in the local paper, stuff like that, where it's just like I can have that little joke with myself and pretend like I'm big time. But for the most part, it's really fun to kind of reminisce about, things about your life, but also things that you really enjoy and have, a passion for. And, it's like Bruce has always been fun, wrestling. I mean, you could bring me back on for wrestling. And to me, it's like wrestling is fun to talk about too, even though, I wasn't, I wish I would have been born earlier to where I could have gotten the heyday of the AWA, even though in Minnesota I did. One of my first matches was watching, as my brother go, Jerry Fat Ass Blackwell going off the top rope on, in a battle royal. And that was always stuck with me because my grandfather watched it, and, he's a farmer in Western Minnesota. And it's just like, that's kind of how it started. And then, into the Attitude Era where I kicked into tape trading and all the other stuff, where I really, really got into other stuff. And then when 24/7 came out, where I pretty much fell in love with Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant, where I'd never watched any NWA before, at all. Probably I got NWA Power Hour in one of the affiliates, because they'd have an hour of world class NWA and stuff like that, where you wouldn't see that. And I remember seeing all that stuff, but I was too young to really appreciate it. Now I love it. I mean, I'll always, if someone is bringing up a Jimmy Valiant, I'll be like, Willie, money daddy, stuff like that, which is, it howls. And then people will tell me oh, he's better in Memphis, he's better in this, and I'm like, that's cool, but I'm like, Boogeyman was mega over. I love him to death, and he puts a smile on my face, and there's no opening card guy at that time who was as over as Jimmy Valiant. And I'm not saying that because there was obviously Flair and Hogan and all the other people that were mega over, but they were the draws. But Jimmy Valiant was just he would just have these very, they weren't great matches, but his promos were just utterly preposterous, ridiculous, but you get sucked in. And that's super cool. And I would do that.
He showed me this video. So all I ever knew was the Boogie Woogie Man. And the Boogie Woogie Man, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, the longest name of a wrestler ever. And so I was living in North Carolina. I was working as a wrestler, and so was he. And we brought him in, and he brought a video of him and Pepper Gomez, and I want to say it's from Chicago. And my opinion of this guy completely changed. So I'd never seen him in Memphis. I had never seen him Indianapolis or anywhere else. But him and Pepper there. But I was saying Jimmy Valiant with Pepper Gomez, and that I think it was Chicago. And I'm going to say this is sometime in the 70s. He was phenomenal. What a heel. They did the thing where Pepper was jumping off on his stomach, and so Jimmy Valiant was like, no, he was jumping off on Pepper's stomach, and of course Pepper was taking it and was great. And then something happened. Either they jumped off on his throat or something. I mean, such a great heel, completely different than that Boogeyman that we had. But if you think about it, it was pretty remarkable that the Boogie Woogie Man had that thing with Paul Jones, and it went for years, right?
Yeah, I know. It's it went from it went through two Stargates. It went through 85 and 86.
Yeah.
And then in 87, right now I'm going through NWA and WWF kind of in sequential order, TV pay-per-views and big shows and stuff like that. And him teaming up with Lasertron, and how just gutted I was where he comes out to Boy from New York City, which gets you so excited, and then comes out to the Boogie Woogie Jam, which is this is some fifth grade, bad song that someone came up with and got paid for, and I'm like, bring back the Boy from New York City, where he's just like doing the clap and all other stuff, and it's great. But yeah, no, Roman Gomez actually told me, he's like, hey, if you ever want a compilation from Memphis, I'll send you one. And another shout out, Roman Gomez has I love the fact that I was able to get like 4 years of NWA television from like the mid 80s all the way to the end of the decade, which I'm still going through, and it's amazing quality, and just great to go back and look at that stuff. Like I'm just such a pack rat, where it's like I'm a completist in that way, where I'm like, I have to do things in sequential order, how feuds come up and angles go through. I don't care how crappy the other stuff is. I'll get through that to get to the good stuff. And, it's just really cool. Like a couple weeks ago, I rewatched WrestleMania 3 for the first time in a while, which, I still contend is will always be the greatest WrestleMania for me of all time. And, stuff like that, which is just, I don't care if I've seen it, hundreds of times. It's just one of those things that you get to go back to and you get to enjoy it. And it just, with your kind of older eyes, you're like, yeah, this is, I miss this. I miss where, you got people together for pay-per-views, or, you're talking with your friends about, the next angle that was coming up. That was really, late 90s and into the 2000s where a lot of that, where it was so much, it was fun to be a fan, even though with us being in the brothership, where Barry has all the Florida stuff, Jamie has the old WWF in some cases, John McAdams, same thing, where they got to see like before the Hogan, the expansion and all that cool stuff. And and the 605 talking about all these other feds that, not a lot of us were privy to, and obviously a lot of us geographical, where it's like, yeah, I had this, and, this was my thing. Then that's just really neat. And that's the cool part about wrestling. Just the same thing as, my love for Bruce Springsteen, or, anybody's love for anything else, where it's like, you can feel the passion. And, that's Barry does that with FanFest, which is really cool.
Yeah. So my wife and I had dinner with Roman out in Las Vegas when we went in, was it January right the week before Christmas.
Yeah.
So Roman, awesome guy. And I didn't know about tape trading or how tapes worked, but, I got Eddie Gilbert from him, and I got Superstar. And I may have gotten something else, but yeah, they're awesome. I've watched a little bit of both of those, because the Masked Superstar was my favorite growing up as a kid. Like I'm talking 5 or 6. It seeing him in Georgia along with the Super Destroyer. And then I remember one of the magazines I got when my parents took me to see Mid-Atlantic it had the Masked Superstar 1 and 2 in it. The back, I remember, had Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. And I remember at that show, my father bought me a Blackjack Mulligan poster. And I want to say the main event. It may not have been the main event, but I remember Blackjack was facing against Superstar, Masked Superstar. So I'm excited to see the Masked Superstar in June. And actually, I have a picture with him He was Demolition. Yeah. And we worked together on a show probably 97, 98. So I'm going to bring that picture and get him to sign it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's just like, to me, really the only people I met Bret Hart at a signing at Mall of America. I met Mick Foley twice, actually 3 times I met Mick Foley. Mick's a really nice guy. There's no secret there. I don't know of too many people that have had a bad interaction with Mick Foley. I met Kurt Angle twice, which was really neat, but I never got to meet a lot of the other guys. I met Jesse Ventura once. That was when he was running for the governorship. It was during a Nitro in 1998. And we happened to see him, and they wouldn't put him on camera because, WCW at the time. But he signed one of his campaign flyers, which I had framed. It's somewhere. And I think I still have one of his campaign shirts, Retaliate 98, which I will probably keep for the rest of my life until I decide to get rid of it. But, cool stuff like that. That's probably like the deepest I go. I'm like on the low end of the totem pole compared to like a lot of people that, follow the territories and other things where they got to see a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, we did a show with Mick Foley, and I'm going to guess 99, maybe. And so, actually, yeah, it would have had to been 99. And it was the year that he did he was the ref, I want to say, for WrestleMania. And so, this is in Wilson, North Carolina. And I was going to tell the story, but I guess here's as good a part to tell as any. And so we're in the dressing room, and he was late, so someone had to go pick him up. And so Wilson is far away from like Raleigh. It's hour and a half. And so someone had to go pick him up at the airport. And so they were late getting back. And this was somewhere around March or April, so there may have been some weather troubles. And he comes in, and I give him a few minutes to go set his things down, and I said, all right, let's go introduce herself. And there's a couple guys that already went over, and I said, hello, my name is Frankie Sechrist. I work as a Hollywood Kid. Very nice to meet you. And shook his hand. I said, thank you for coming, helping us get a big crowd. Oh yeah, good to meet you. And he, Michael Bakikio, who owns High Spots, was there. He was my traveling buddy at the time. And so we went and we sat down. And so I was working, I don't know, some type of gimmick match where I was going to get juice and against Spanky the Little Rascal. Not Brian Kendrick. This is Spanky from Wilson, North Carolina. And we worked the match, went outside, and somehow I called for him to give me a hip toss on the floor because it was like a concrete floor. Well, I look over as we're out in the crowd, and I make eye contact with Mick Foley, and I'm like, oh, crap, I really got to make it look good, right? So I take a really big bump on the wood floor, no pads, no nothing. And then when I juice really good because there's Mick Foley that's watching. He was there at the gimmick table while we were working. So we get done and we go back in and take a picture, and he comes over and says, oh yeah, that, or I go to him and ask him how it was or whatever. And he says, oh, that was really good. I enjoyed it. And that was all I got. So then the main event comes, and they called for him to do a run in and for the babyface to do a run in. Me and someone else did a run in. And I think they were trying to set something up for later, but it never happened. Or it may have, and I just wasn't booked. But so I did a run in the main event, and Mick was hitting people with the chair to get them out of the ring, right? And when I was running in there, he was hitting those people so freaking hard with the chair. It was just like gunshots going off. And I said, holy shit, I hope he does not hit me with that chair. Because I just met him. He saw me work a match, so he knows I'm working babyface. But you don't know. You don't know if people paying attention or give a shit, right? If they want their spot, they're going to take it. If he wanted to just start hitting everybody with a chair, what are we going to do, right? We're not going to say, no, please don't hit me. So I looked at him, and he's as Mankind with the and I look over the crowd and I start clapping like this. Yeah, woo! And I look at him because he still had the chair and had just hit 2 or 3 guys with the loudest, most unbelievable hard chair shots I have ever heard in my life. And I was so freaking scared he was going to hit me with that chair. And I'd already taken a really big bump on the floor for him. I had already cut my head off for him. And I was like, damn, and I was in college. I was at University of North Carolina. I thought, man, if that dude hits me and sends me back to school with like busted up ribs or a broken elbow or something, that chair shot, I'm going to be screwed. And but he got the message that I was a good guy and he didn't hit me. I was very, very, very thankful. And then the picture that I took with him has disappeared. You know how you can go on, I think it's called archive.org, and you can look at old web pages. So I went to my old web page, and I got some pictures off of that, but his is one of those that I cannot retrieve from my old web page from, 99, 98, 99, 2000, 2001.
No, that's too bad. Yeah, it's like probably an old GeoCities site where it's like the one of the webmasters that was big, like in the after around the .com boom, and it's like, oh yeah, it's there, but maybe not everything's there.
Yeah, so one of the guys I talked to was the owner of WooWrestling.com, which was Al Getz, who's on the Arcadian Vanguard network there.
Yeah, oh God, Al. I didn't listen to Charting the Territories, and I know it didn't last very long, but I'll have to probably.
Oh, it didn't?
It went away, and I think because now they're debuting Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon. I think they just dropped 2 episodes already. I'll have to look into that because, I mean, it's funny. Like, I think Jim Cornette at this point should probably get a medal for how many 6 degrees of separation he has caused for people to come together. Like, I got into the 605 and Arcadian Vanguard because of Jim Cornette, because Brian's pimping the show on Jim's show. And I remember when I was traveling a lot for work, and hearing the first couple 605s, those were like amazing, and they got better, and they've gotten better and better. And it's sad that for a time, like, I mean, during the pandemic, I think we only got like 4 or 5, but like, talking to Roman and a few other people that have worked, they're like, that's Brian's baby. That thing's going to be perfect. That thing's going to be as best as can be. And it's just like, those are things that are so neat about, podcasts like Breaking Kayfabe and all the other ones that take such a different slant, where it's like, you don't hear the same crap that you've heard for the last 20, 25 years. You get to hear stuff that's not off the beaten path. I mean, between like Brother Midnight and, Howard Baum's stuff, which I remember being in San Diego and hearing his, I think it was Dungeon Master Bob. No, I think it was S&M Bob Caudle.
Yeah.
And I'm crying, and I'm surprised the people like right in front of me were looking at, is this guy all right? And I'm just laughing so hard because I can't keep it together, because he just couldn't. And that it's a credit to Howard. And I mean, I'm not, I'm putting him over because it's genuinely funny, and it's just it's good stuff like that where you're into something good. And
that was one of the highlights of the Fan Fest, was that Howard showed up. And he showed up a little late. Let's see, what was it? Cup of coffee, Jerry Jarrett. He showed up, but then at the end of the night, we'd all went out to dinner. We come back, and there's Chris Zaha having this just amazing conversation with Howard Babb there in the lobby, and it was hilarious. And there's my wife, and God love her, she was just amazing, and she took it all in stride and just loved it. And it's funny I say God love her. I want to tell this story. I don't think I've ever told before. So if people are getting to this is about 2 hours in. Michael Bukikio and I, High Spots, ran around a few years. Then I went to college, got busy, whatever. We sort of drifted apart afterwards. But so we had done an interview with Buddy Landale. He comes to Michael's condo there in Charlotte, which was right across from the Panthers practice field. So a lot of the Panthers wives, girlfriends, Panthers themselves lived in our little complex there. where Michael lived, and I would go and visit on the weekends. And so before I get to Buddy, let me say this. So next door to Michael lived Greg Lloyd from the Steelers, who went to the Panthers with Kevin Green. And one night we went out and brought some people back to his place, and we're out on the deck, and here comes Greg Lloyd through his French doors, the balcony, with two big ass dogs. And he says, "Hey, y'all are being kind of loud. Can y'all keep it down?" We're like, "Oh shit, yes sir." You will not hear peeps. So she said, "Girls, come on, we got to go inside." And so that's that story. Back to Buddy Landale. So Buddy goes and he comes and he brings this redhead with him, and I'm going to make up her name. I'm going to call her Karen. And they talk about how Buddy was out at the nightclub the night before, got up on stage, sang with the band, and Buddy was living in Tennessee, and this girl lived in Salisbury. And I know her real name. I never forgot it. And, you know, Michael, I saw him a couple of years ago, and I mentioned it to him. Hey, do you remember this? He did not have a recollection of this. And I told him, I said, well, this is exactly what happened. So we do the interview. Michael's talking, asking all these questions there at Michael's condo there. And the whole time, Buddy's going through this interview, and he's like talking about his wife, my wife, God love her. He kept saying, God love her. And I'm sure it's somewhere on High Spots. This interview still to this day. My wife, God love her. You know, she put up with me. She helped me out. God love her. Meanwhile, he's here with this girl, and he would say, this girl and her mom used to take care of the boys. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So we get done with the first part. We take a break, use the bathroom, get a drink, whatever. And he goes, hey, boss, you know, Karen over there give you a really good blowjob. You want one?
That sounds like Budrow.
And Michael and I looked at each other and said, nah, I'm good. And he's like, are you sure? And looked at her. She said nothing. She didn't say, Buddy, no, I will not. She didn't say a word, so we knew she really would. And so we were like, no, we're good. And he's like, oh, you guys together? Nope, not together. Just, hey, just want to get this done, you know, got girlfriends, whatever. And then we got back to the interview. But that's
well, at least it's not Budrow where he'd go, if it don't snow, we don't go. I mean, mid 80s Budrow, which, you know, it an innocuous line now, but at the time, just one of those things where it's, you know, it's just funny. Or, you know, the Booking the Territory line will be like, you know, Budrow doing be blessed and be a blessing, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I love that podcast too. So I've been saving that story of Budrow, and I've got a picture. So next time I go up to the storage unit, I'm going to get the picture of me and Bill Eadie, and I'll get the picture of me and Buddy out where it looks like he's got on eyeliner. And he's got his blonde hair tucked under a baseball cap. So that'd been 99, I think.
Okay, yeah, no, that's awesome, man. That's cool stuff.
Yeah, so I could tell that story because my wife's asleep.
Yeah, no, there's the things of like, yeah, the wife's not gonna know this, the wife's not gonna know. There are things that are best left not told to the wife.
Well, you know, so right before the pandemic, so January, I went to see Michael Bakikio. I'd seen him post something of High Spots being at New Japan, or maybe I asked him about New Japan being here in St. Pete. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to be there. And I said, man, I'm going to come and see you. So my daughter was into wrestling. My son was not. And my daughter was on a camping trip for school, so she couldn't make it. But my son went with me, And so we went down there and met Michael, and it's just kind of funny, walking into this place. It's a really cool, like, I don't want to call it a Coliseum, but it's got nice wood floors, and it's old. It's from like the 40s. And how I just said, hey, I'm coming to see Michael from High Spots. Oh, yeah, go ahead. At a New Japan show, and I'm in there just walking around. They're setting up. And I had printed off pictures of Michael wrestling back in the day. And because I never see him post anything on Facebook or Twitter or whatever of any of him wrestling. And so I take it and I say, hey, Michael, and I meet all of his people there. So one of them is Savannah Evans, if you may have seen her on Impact. So, but I didn't know that she was Savannah Evans. I can't remember whatever her real name was, but that's how she introduced herself. And Tommy Thomas was there. So I give Michael these pictures of him wrestling, and they're really, 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 really cool. And I have them in my car still. That and I told Kerry Silkin, I'm like, because he speaks very highly of Michael, and I said, man, that guy actually was a really good wrestler, like in the day, 99, 2000, he was really, really good. So I have some cool pictures that my mother or other people took that was really neat. And he was very appreciative. He's going to take those to his wife and show her. And then as we're leaving, I heard Michael say, hey, Colt, look, I told you I was a wrestler. Look at these pictures. So he's showing Colt Cabana the pictures of him. And then I get a picture of Colt and my son by the New Japan ring, which was really cool. Of course, my son, it pisses me off, right? My son's like, he don't care. Like, he had heard me say Colt Cabana's name because I used to listen to the podcast like crazy. And they would, he and my daughter would go, boom, boom, Colt Cabana. And he did not care one bit. Did not. He could have been standing next to a tree. But it was really cool that I got to go spend that time. And then Michael and his gang and I all went and had lunch down the street in St. Pete. And but anyway, that's my high spots, New Japan, St. Pete store. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I went to the G1 show in Dallas in 2019, where I got to meet Jushin Liger and then a bunch of the other New Japan guys at the meet and greet. And you'd see Meltzer around. That's the funny thing. It's like the two New Japan shows that I've seen. I'd say three. Two in the Bay Area, and then one in Dallas, where I was like, yeah, it's the G1. It's the first night, which is really cool. And I know a few Japanese phrases, so to be respectful, go up and be like, Genki desu ka, which is pretty much how are you in Japanese, and stuff like that, which was really neat. So I got to meet. You did the meet and greet where it was like they would take a picture with your phone. They'd like have one of the people would just snap about 5, 6, 7 pictures, and I think you paid like, I'm trying to remember what it was. It wasn't cheap, but it's New Japan, so at this point I'm like, they're coming into America, they got to make it worth their while. Like every wrestling event now, it's not where it was, when we were younger, where it was a little bit more affordable, where it's like now they're really, jacking up the prices to go to like an event, like it's ridiculous now, as opposed to
the tickets were like $150.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did one in San Jose in November, but going back to Dallas, I did almost ringside in Dallas, and then I ran into these couple guys. We had drinks afterwards, but beforehand, and it was like triple digits in Dallas. It's after the 4th of July. I just came back from Europe with my in-laws and my wife and my daughter, and we had a great time in Paris and London. And I'm going away the next weekend. So I'm trying to get the jet lag out of my system where I'm going to travel again. And, it's like 102, and they go to like this kind of little convention center about 20 minutes away from downtown Dallas. So I'm taking an Uber from the airport to get there, to get in line. And I purposely gave myself, like the VIP stuff. So I'm passing everyone in line, just boom, 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 get out and done, and then go back to the hotel and kind of come down, but I was really excited because I got to meet Hiroshi Tanahashi. He was really nice. How
tall was he?
He about my height, maybe a little bit smaller, but put together guy. But really cool guy.
So
really,
6 foot.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
Probably like 5'11", 6 foot. And then Kota Ibushi was extremely nice. Tetsuya Naito was really nice. Was like really, really nice.
How was their English?
Pretty good. Most of them were. The only person that did not say a word was Tomohiro Ishii. He just kayfabed everybody. He was literally just like, I'm here, I'm a badass, I know it. Didn't acknowledge what I had to say, just took a photo with the fist, and that was it. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. You're not gonna offend me. And then that's when they announced Kenta. Kenta was really nice too. Sonata was like some dude you'd meet in like on the beach. Had like the black button-up shirt, shorts, and had like the like a fisher's cap on, and he was as cool as hell. It was really nice. And then I met when they came to San Jose. I met Okada. Okada's English was he did enough. But and you could tell at the end of the Dallas show because they had Okada and Tanahashi as the main event for night one, and it was really sad because there was like probably 3,500 people in a 20,000 seat arena because it's American Airlines Center, so it's downtown Dallas. And it's like me as a wrestling fan, and I mean I'm not gonna be, telling myself I'm the zenith of Japanese wrestling knowledge and all other stuff, but I know enough history to where it's like this is a big deal. Like the G1 is coming to America. Mm-hmm. The tournament's been around for close to 30 years at that point, and it's really fun to watch. So, and then also I met Jushin Liger, which I totally marked out, and I messed up, and he laughed at me, but it was in a playful way, which was fun. But I got to meet Jushin Liger. And that was really cool. And then he wrestled, I think, in one of the six-mans before the tournament matches. So, I mean, it was about a 3-hour card, and, it was a lot of fun. And
wow.
But, and New Japan was, it's so different than what is in America for the most part, even though I think one show I went to at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, I was so happy I got to go to the Cow Palace because of just the history and stuff. Where you get to go to the old buildings, and even though it's the newer stuff, you get to think about, oh yeah, Pat Patterson was here, Ray Stevens was here, and all other stuff, and just all that history, and that's really cool to get in those old buildings. They got all that good soul. And then they did a show in November of that same year at the Civic, which is downtown San Jose. It's this old kind of like theater, and is really good for wrestling. I had no idea the place existed, and I'd been here for 10 years. And it was so cool. And I got this bootleg Jushin Thunder Liger shirt, and I got like front row tickets because I'm just like, I'm gonna spoil myself, whatever else. And then I find out it's Liger's last match, which ended up being really disappointing because he jobbed out. He was tagging with a local guy, and it was like a comedy match with Colt Cabana and I think Yano. And I was just like, I wanted to see Liger. This is the last U.S. match I'm going to see Jushin Thunder Liger on, and this is the popcorn fart that I got, and I was kind of disappointed. But the cool thing is one of their TV people pulled me aside and said, "You're a big Jushin Liger fan." I'm like, "Absolutely, I am." And I did all right. It's like we were talking about earlier, how we sound, on a podcast or like an interview. We're interviewing each other, or just small talk where you have your little idiosyncrasies about how you sound, or do you sound like an idiot? Do you sound, what you're talking about? And I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they replayed it on Japanese television at some point. I could be wrong, where the guy told me, he's like, yeah, he's going to see this. So they're going to do, but I didn't watch Wrestle Kingdom the next year, where I don't know if they had like a VTR where they had all the fans like saying, hey, you know, thank you, Liger, and everything else, which was really neat. And it's just like, it's so infectious when you hear his entrance music, even though, you know, you don't speak Japanese, you get the feeling when Jushin Liger comes out that it's really, really, really cool. And, you know, we got to see other stuff. I met Will Ospreay, who was I was so burnt out and tired, and he could kind of sense that. He was kind of needling me a little bit. And I met Okada, met Sonata again, and, you know, Jay White. Jay White was really cool, really, really nice guy. Put the IWGP Intercontinental belt on my shoulder. I still have a picture of it on my phone. Real cool stuff. And he asked for your name, and he shook your hand, and he took time with you, which was really, really cool. That's like the coolest thing as like a fan, when someone wants to know your name and is interested enough to do it. So that was really neat. And, you know, I think that was the last wrestling show I went to. And then, you know, 2020 happened. And then here we are in 2022, you know, almost 2 years later into the pandemic and all other fun stuff.
On March 20th of this year, they'll be returning to that same building, and it's called Strong Style Evolve 2022. And it's got Tom Lawler, Jay White, Juice Robinson, Fred Rosser, Jonah, Carl Fredericks, Clark Connors, Hikuleo, Rocky Romero, and TBA.
Yeah, no, they frequent out here a lot because they have the LA dojo with Shibata as the trainer. And then I know they're doing one in Chicago for the first time. I told Chris about that. Hopefully he'll head out there and do that. But it's you know, a lot of cool stuff. And you know, I was glad I got to do that. At some point, I am gonna probably make the pilgrimage to go to Japan and do like the last 3 or 4 nights at the Tokyo Dome for the G1, and then just travel around Japan at some point. It's a bucket list thing. But
you know, one of the funniest things I heard was when I used to listen to Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows podcast. And, you know, Anderson's got the dates on his side. So does AJ Styles. And I think AJ asked him, "Oh, what are those dates? You know, on your side, is that your kids' birthdays?" Carlos is like, "What? You think I'd get my kids' birth dates on my side? No, man. These are the dates I was in the G1 finals."
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, no, it's like
it's pretty hilarious, right? You know, it's like
with the Bullet Club guys, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
with Doc and Carl Anderson.
Cool, man. Well, I think I'll wrap up here. It's 1:30 on the East Coast.
Yeah, no, it is 10:30 for me. That's the beautiful thing about the West Coast is it's not so late, but where it's for you, it's like, oh yeah, you're ahead of everything. Like sports watching out here, I love because it's like early games are at like 10 in the morning. Super Bowl starts at like 3 in the afternoon. It's just after dinner time, where it's like you could still have a night, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, thanks for inviting me on, dude. It was a lot of fun. You know, my first podcast ever. So I mean, I'm excited to hear it back when it's all said and done. So
it'll be about 3 weeks, unless I do 2 a week, and I'll let you know, give you a heads up. I'll do some editing and try and make me not sound like an idiot or.
Oh no, we played off each other as best as humanly possible. That's what I will say. So I mean, realistically, like I started, like I'll go back to when you asking me to come on, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, how am I gonna make this work? And I'm like, let me listen to the podcast first. And by the way, your theme song is fucking amazing. Like that hooked me. I'm not saying that to blow smoke. I absolutely love it. It's like any type of music would be. If the first listen hooks you, it's never going to leave you. I don't care if you play the song to death, it stays with me. And I love it. I'm just like, man, this is bumping. I'm like, this is great.
Good. I'm glad you joined. So I had done a podcast the year before I moved here, and just so I could get free advertisement for my real estate business. And then what I started doing at the end, which is what I'll do again, is I had started interviewing businesses in the area, and and I would put it all on YouTube, and I would pass it out. And I still to this day, I'll get people wanting to be on my podcast.
That's cool.
Yeah, and well, so I just got this book in the mail yesterday, and I was like, damn, I don't even know this lady. Why did I buy her book? And then I just now remembered she had sent me an email wanting to be on my podcast and talk about her book. And she lived near where I used to live in North Carolina. And so I have to tell my wife tomorrow. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't even know why I bought this lady's book. But that's the reason I bought the book, is because she had messaged me wanting to be on the podcast and told me about her book. It's called Women About Missiles, or Women Know About Missiles. It's I don't know, but it's like anybody that's on Breaking Kayfabe with Baljan and Barry, I support them. I go and buy their book. Greg Klein, I bought his White Papers. I just bought White Tigers. I just bought 2 copies of his book. I didn't even know. Do you remember them talking about Greg Klein's White Tigers?
I'm trying to think, because like I'm way behind.
All right, so this is
purposely done it because I think I'm like in October of last year.
Yeah, so this is a historical fiction about when Ty Cobb was being called racist names and went into the stands and actually beat up a fan. So it's a historical fiction around that event. So that's an actual event that happened. But there's he made historical fiction about that. But then when I Googled him, so I just bought it. He said, hey, you can get it on Amazon or wherever. I just went and bought it. But then I Googled him and said, oh, he had written a JYD book too. And I didn't hear it. So I actually have an interview with Greg coming up. I have 2. I'll splice them together though. But so today I just went and ordered 2 of his books. And I'll just give them as gifts to people in the group. So anytime that someone's on there, I just try and support them and buy whatever that they've got to help out. And then I usually take a picture of it. So yeah, the White Tigers, I got a signed copy from him, and it's the way I haven't had a chance to read it, but the way he described it sounds like a really cool book, especially if you're into baseball. And he lives up there near Cooperstown in New York.
Yeah, I've been there. It's a surreal place. I was young when I did it. If I went back, I'd probably have different ways. But it's like that literally is the town. It's like that Baseball Hall of Fame's like really.
Yeah. So my tie-in to baseball, to put a third bow on it, is the first car that I owned. We bought from Danny Schaefer. You know who he is?
I'm trying to.
He played for the Boston Red Sox in the early '80s.
Okay.
And I don't think he was a huge success, but he played for him. So I looked him up, and I had the name in my head because this was I bought the car in 1989. It was a 1980 Cutlass Supreme, and I had it for about 9 months, and then I hit a kid on a bicycle. Told the kid's fault. He's okay. Broke his leg and cut his head, but he was okay. And I took the money that his dad's insurance company gave me and sold my 3-wheeler, sold my drum kit, and took what money I had, and I bought a Jeep. And my dad was pissed. He says, if you hit a kid on a bicycle with that Jeep, you will run over him and kill him. And I said, Dad, it wasn't my fault to begin with of hitting the kid. And he said, well, I'm just letting you know, if you hit a kid with your Jeep, you're going to kill him. I did not hit a kid, so with the Jeep.
Hey,
but I got the first car from Danny Schaefer. Okay. He had played for someone in Winston-Salem, and met a girl from my hometown, Mount Airy, North Carolina, and that's where her parents live. That's where I bought the car.
Oh, cool.
So, man, what a talk. So good to
Yeah.
talk to you. We'll bring you back on and we'll talk some wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, let me know and we'll make it work. We'll make it work out a little better. I mean, the coast stuff is always tough, so I can totally empathize where it's like it's easier on the East Coast, but when it's like 3 hour difference, and I mean, imagine if I was in Hawaii, you'd be like 6 hour difference. I'd be on the beach.
Yeah. Usually when the weeks when I don't have the kids, it's a little better because I don't have to get up at 6.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I'll be up and at 'em. I'll be back in the office here probably around 8:30 or so tomorrow morning. Now I'll be fine. No, it's Friday tomorrow. I mean, I set myself up pretty good, so I'm not too worried about it. It's just
awesome.
It's real life. That's all it is. I'm down. The routine's down.
I tell my son when he plays a game or has a practice, he is so tired, and the reason is because he's not eating a lot. He's been trying to lose weight, and so he's not eating a whole bunch. And so I'm like, Bud, you don't need 2 days to recover from one game, right? You recover the next day, and you should be good to go, right? You rest and relax from playing the soccer. So just like me, even though I'm almost 50, I'll recover. I might, be a little slow tomorrow, but I'll bounce back on Saturday and I'll be okay, from staying up till 2.
Oh, no, definitely. It's just like, yeah, no.
But I'm always happy to talk to the brothership, man. I'm so glad I got you on.
Yeah, no, like I said, I appreciate the invite. I mean, I should send out the bat signal to Rick and get Rick Nathan on and just be idiots on the podcast. And I mean, when Ariel brought it up, be like, you both need to be, because I love the fact that Rick just decided out of the blue, okay, enough of Barry crap jokes. We're gonna get your testicles and make it a thing. And I'm just laughing because of the ridiculousness of it. I'm like, it don't matter. Nothing gonna do that. It's just like the same thing when I listened to the first episode where, Ariel had said he drank, bull penis, and I'm like, whoa, that's great. And it triggered that triggered another, but which I'll save for another time, about my bachelor party. In Minneapolis, and little funny story about a bull's nether regions, and how I got one of the people in my party to drink out of said thing, and it's just funny and stuff like that. But no, I popped, and it's fun. It's fun to do that, just to be to reminisce and be a little silly, talk about stuff that we've all done and had good times at.
Yeah, you said Rick is West Coast too, right?
Yeah, he's in LA. I know he's met up with Barry a few times when Barry's went there. But yeah, no, he's in LA. At some point when I get back down to LA, I'm gonna go meet him. I almost did. Then my wife ended up going to Hawaii, and I had to cancel the trip, and I was kind of sad because I usually make my yearly pilgrimage down to the Hollywood Bowl and take in a John Williams night at the Hollywood Bowl. I fly down to LA, get a hotel for a night, then come back up to the Bay Area. I mean, it's like a 45-minute hour flight.
Oh wow!
So it's really, really easy to get in and out. I mean, LA is gigantic anyway, so stuff like that where it's like me getting away and like resetting and taking in a nice evening and then coming back and be back in it, which is really nice. But yeah, that's definitely at some point. I'm hoping this year I'll go and see Rick, and I'm like, Rick, if you're listening to this, damn it, I'm coming for you, brother.
Yeah, we'll get you two on together.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. It'd just be a grand old time, because and Rick is just it's funny, just little stupid stuff that's just so ridiculously funny. You just just belly laugh at. I get the side looks from my wife like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. Just something stupid on Facebook. It's great."
All right, man. Well, you take care. Thank you so much for your time. I had a good time.
Yeah, same here, man. Thanks. Be good and have a good night.
All right, we'll see ya.
Yeah, bye.
And let me say this, Ariel, and then I'm going to shut up and let you handle the rest of the show here.
Oh my God, no.
But if you're a brother shipper and you want to be on here and talk with me or Ariel, please just message me. I know that when we first started this up, there was a couple of people who said I'd love to be on the show, and I haven't gotten to you yet, so I'll be reaching out to you. This conversation that you hear with Matt Crowder is the last of the brother shippers interviews that I have. I'd like to get some more, and ideally, I think I'd like to try and put out 2 a week of these. Of just the brother shippers talking, or if you would like to record you and another brother shipper talking, and I'll just shut up and record it and then edit it, I'm happy to do that too. I know that Matt Crowder and Rick Nathan want to have a conversation. Our schedules can't line up just yet, and I want to get Travis Raines and Chris Zaha on and let them talk about wrestling in 1993.
WCW 1993.
Yeah, because I bulldogged that too. And
that's fine. Well, yeah, you kind of did, but it's cool though. I mean, I would love to have them back on. I would love to hear Chris talk about Lex Luger, like more of his love for Lex Luger and all that stuff. I don't know, stuff that we see on the Brothership Facebook page.
It is so much better to hear someone talk, to hear them talk about it.
Yeah, sometimes I don't want to hear Chris talk though. I mean,
get out of here.
I'm just kidding.
Will you stop?
Yeah, no, but
gorilla.
Oh man, what to talk about now? Like we're out of time, right?
Yeah. Oh, you're still in the Tony Schiavone gimmick? Oh, we're out of time.
We're out of time. No.
See you next week.
No, but
tell us about your girlfriend. How's that going?
Oh, it's going fine. Long distance relationships are really difficult. She lives in the Philippines. I'm here in California. And I mean, the only time we really get to chat, it's cool that like I work nights because it's daytime over there for her, so we get to talk when I have time, at work, and then we chat a little bit when I get home from work, and then that's like the time she goes to sleep. So, and whatnot. But other than that, I mean, how long distance relationships can be. It's just but it's going well. We are doing the best we can with the circumstances that's in front of us, not just with the distance, but with the whole like COVID thing going on. I don't know if they're still doing quarantines, or I'm still a little bit afraid to travel. But it's getting better. I mean, it's slowly getting better. They're going to take out the mask mandates here in Santa Clara County on March 2nd. I think March 2nd or sometime in March. But it's good to see that, we're progressing to past this crazy thing going on. But yeah, it's going good.
Good.
Yeah, it's going good.
Well, let me ask you this. I don't want mean to put you on the spot, but ideally, where would you like to go and see her?
When?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question actually. Probably within the next okay, so my mom plans to retire next year. So probably in next year or two, that would be great. I just want to make sure that no other crazy variant of the disease will come about. I just want to make sure of as much as I can try to travel comfortably and without having that in my mind, that thought in my mind where I might get sick or something like that, or I might get stuck in quarantine for 2 weeks or whatnot. I just want to make sure all of that's taken care of first before, hopefully within the next year or two. But yeah, it's also kind of expensive right now. I think it's like $2,000 just to go to the Philippines.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's fine. I got to make sacrifices, to earn the money. So, but hopefully within the next year or two. I don't want to wait too long. That's just gonna drive me crazy. It's driving her crazy too. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm glad that it's still going well for you because those long distance relationships can be tough.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot. Like I was courting her for an entire year before I actually asked her to be my girlfriend. So yeah, we spent an entire year just getting to know each other and talking and making sure that like starting up a relationship is something that we both really want, and we're prepared to deal with any of the bullshit that goes along with long distance relationships.
It does take a lot of effort, but for me, some of my best relationships have been long distance. Maybe because I'm difficult. I don't know, but
really difficult.
Well, it's easier to have a long distance relationship with someone because it's a different kind of effort.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, it can be expensive dating.
Yes.
So I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Well, it could be part of it. Another thing is like, they're there with you in person and they know your quirks and probably little annoyance, little things that annoy them. Like, say if you snore while you sleep and stuff like that. But in a long distance relationship, they don't really get to experience that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a different kind of effort. It's not like they're there with you, that's a whole different thing altogether. Being there versus being absent, So
anyway, I think that's probably about it, folks. I have taken up enough of my buddy Ariel's time. I'm gonna let him get some rest. I'm gonna go and see why my dogs are not fighting because that's worrisome.
I gotta take my dog out to pee, and she's been scared. She has a fear of flies. She doesn't like flies at all. So let me tell this story real quick. So yesterday morning, she went into my mother's room, and I went to go lay down next to her, and I noticed that there's a fly that was chilling on the wall, and my dog is for some reason very afraid of flies, but I wanted to go and kill it. So I got up real quick, and my dog didn't know at the time. She was under the covers, and I closed the bedroom door so the fly doesn't escape. I went to get the fly swatter. I went back to the room, and already my dog, I guess, noticed the fly in there, and she started like whimpering and trying to get out of the room. So I opened the door to let her out. She ran out. I went in, killed the fly, and disposed of it. And I told my dog, I was like, Minnie, I killed it. I killed the fly. You don't have to worry anymore. But she was in the other room shaking so much. She was so frightened that I locked her in the room for like a second with that fly, and she was so scared. And anyway, so fast forward, I'm at work last night. My mom calls me right before she leaves to go to work. So it was like 4 a.m, and she's like, Ariel, was there a fly in the house? And I'm like, yeah, I killed it. Why? She said, well, because Minnie's been scared this whole time. Like she didn't want to, when my mom took her out to go use the bathroom, she didn't want to come back inside the house. And she was always following my mom everywhere and just being very scared and frightened. So I said, yeah, I killed a fly, but I don't know why she's still scared. And then I'm like thinking, oh, maybe because I closed the door with her trapped with the fly inside the room. And she's like, oh my God, why'd you do that? I'm like, well, I didn't want the fly to get out. So, yeah, and she's been like, she didn't eat dinner. She didn't want to go to the bathroom before my parents went to work. Usually they take her out, and she hasn't bothered me to go out since. Right now, Usually she would bother me and like ask to go, like she would, give me the sign that she wants to go use the bathroom like around 9 o'clock, and she hasn't done so yet, and it's already past 10:30. So I'm gonna go check on her, make sure she's okay. I came home from work, she was still a bit scared. I tried to comfort her as best I could. I kept telling her the fly is not here, it's dead. I will probably, I don't know what else to do for her.
Poor baby.
Yeah, but I hope she'll be okay. It's kind of weird though. I don't know why she doesn't like flies.
Well, I don't know anyone that likes them, but I've heard of
Well, yeah, that's true.
Bless her heart.
Yeah. She'll be okay soon, I hope.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad that you got to talk on this episode.
Yeah, it's a random episode. I like it though. Just random conversations. I love it.
Of Frankie's quirks and how crazy I am. So.
Well, yeah, your quirks, your real estate, my dog's fear of flies, my long distance relationship.
Well, cool, man. You go get some rest. Thank you so much for being my wonderful guest, my co-host. Thank you so much for being my co-host. I couldn't have a better co-host. You're awesome. And I look forward to talking with you, maybe later this week whenever I get the other interview ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you, Frankie.
All right. Have a good night.
All right, guys.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.